Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of March of the Machine Commander deck techs. I'm covering every legendary creature from the March of the Machine main set in no particular order, plus the extra legends from Mom Jumpstart, the special pre-release promos, and if there's interest, maybe even the non-face legends from the Mom Commander products. So if you have a March of the Machine Commander you'd like to see me build, or a way you want to see me build them, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today, our commander is Kogla and Yidaro, two of Ikoria's biggest behemoths. According to the lore, their role in the Phyrexian invasion was impaling the invaders one by one. They are a team in the sense that Kogla is able to lift massive Phyrexians overhead and suplex them down onto the spiky crystals on Yidaro's back. This is probably an illegal move in most wrestling matches, but Ikoria is a wild place, and any referees likely fled Drannith when it was destroyed. Anyway, before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build around my commander. I want to show off why they're cool and why I put them in the command zone. So whatever they want me to do, I will put 30 cards toward that. That's my game plan, it's what we do at the table, and how we try to win. 30 more cards go toward these three categories of support for that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction. I usually run one or two sweepers just to reset things if it's getting out of hand on other people's playmats. Sometimes I'll run more if it would play into the game plan. Sometimes not at all, just depending. But I almost always keep to my floor of 38 lands so that I can hit my land drops and make sure my spells are able to make it to the stack. So let's talk about our team up commander. Kogla and Yidaro is a 7/7 legendary ape dinosaur turtle for 2 double red and double green. That's ape and dinosaur turtle. That has two abilities. The first is an enters ability. When it enters, we either choose to give it haste and trample until end of turn, or we choose to have it fight a creature we don't control. The other ability only works from our hand because it requires us to pay 2 a red and a green and discard it. And if we do, we destroy up to one target artifact or enchantment, and then we shuffle it into our library and draw a card. So obviously our commander's two abilities are pretty limited. Its enters ability is a one and done, and its discard ability, like I said, only works from our hand, not the command zone. In this way, Kogla and Yidaro qualifies as a virtual vanilla creature, something I bet Pelucranos Reborn would see favorably, so look in my video's description to see how I built Pelucranos. Anyway, this is a good card, but it probably fits better in the 99 than in command of its own deck. But that just means we get to build around it as much thematically as we do synergistically, and Kogla and Yidaro are a simple pair. They want to rush in, and they want to throw down. They aren't here to battle, what they want is to fight. Forget about bite effects, like blocking one-sided damage is for chumps. When you're a contender, everyone takes damage, and scars are just tally marks of victories won. What could be more gruel than that? We are a ferocious deck, with most of our creatures having power 4 or greater, and many of them fight our opponent's creatures when they or a teammate enters. We have payoffs for those fights, redirecting damage, or building up with counters, or even tagging in for another round. And the more we fight, the bigger and stronger we get, ensuring we make it to the bell. But it doesn't end there. Because the draw of the ring is irresistible, we have spells that'll let our opponent's creatures do some fighting of their own amongst each other, giving us a chance to watch from our corner. When we get back in, our jabs are fast and deadly, between Deathtouch effects that ensure our targets lose their fights, and evasive and recursive effects that let us bob and weave when they go to the mattresses themselves. We even have protective effects that let our opponents tire themselves out trying to take us down. And once our rope-a-dope is done and their guard is dropped, we can swing in with punishing body blows or even a commander damage haymaker. In the end, our foes can only stare up from the mat while cartoon birds orbit their heads as the crowd roars from all sides, and they wonder when the gloves came off. You'll enjoy this deck if you like going all in on lesser-known, lesser-used mechanics to show how they can still hold their own in modern Magic. Or if you feel like creature conflict shouldn't be restricted to just the combat phase. It's also a great excuse to play up the boxing and wrestling motifs in your table chat, and to do your best Randy Savage impression. Oh yeah. So, as usual, this Moxfield list is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, below the deck list, you will find a considering section with a bunch of other cards that I thought about including, but decided against. Many of them are for bigger budgets, so if your budget is bigger, or you already have these cards in your collection, you can go for some of those. If your budget is smaller, I have plenty of those cards as well. This is a relatively cheap deck compared to where I normally keep my my sort of like window of prices for my decks, which is like $120 to $180 US. But yeah, the considering section is a great place to start if you want to find out, to get some ideas for how to build Kogla and Yidaro yourself. But an excellent budget commander. So we're going to go to our game plan, which, big surprise, it's fight spells. We're here to just do a lot of fighting. We want to play a bunch of big creatures, and especially our commander, and have our creatures fight our opponent's creatures so that we can get in. That's our version of Evasion. It doesn't matter if they have blockers, if we get rid of those blockers. And on a fight, since we get to choose which creatures are fighting, it's like we get to choose where the combat damage is distributed. So it's still pretty good, even if it's not like a bite effect. So we're going to start with one of my favorite cards in recent years, Bushwhack. For a single green, we get a sorcery that lets us choose to either Lay of the Land, which is search our library for a basic, reveal it, put it in our hand, and shuffle, or we can choose one of our creatures and one of someone else's creatures and have them fight each other. We can get a bush, or we can whack. Pretty good. And 1 mana as a sorcery for a fight spell is pretty much on rate, so having it be modal as a way for us to draw a basic is pretty good. Next up, from the recent Edge of Eternities, is Melt Strider's Resolve. This is also a single green at sorcery speed, but it's an aura. We put it on a creature we control, and when it enters, enchanted creature fights a creature that our opponent controls, or an opponent controls. So this is also a 1 mana green sorcery speed fight spell. However, because it's an aura, it also gives the enchanted creature +0/+2, which applies during the fight, so we can maybe even trade up based on what the creature we target with this, what their actual stats are. In addition, for future turns, that creature can't be blocked by more than one creature, which is not exactly evasion, but it is kind of a protective ability. So that creature is protected by having +2 to its toughness, and also by the fact that it can't be multi-blocked. So pretty good. If you were to put this on a menace creature, which, to be fair, I don't know that we're running any of, but if you were to put a menace creature in this deck, Melt Strider's Resolve makes that creature unblockable. Next up is Primal Might, which I love that they reprinted in Foundations. X and a green for a sorcery that is essentially at its base another 1 green sorcery that lets one creature we control fight a creature we don't control. But the X is an amount of power and toughness bonus that creature gets until end of turn. So not only does this make it easier to kill and to survive a fight, it also means that after that fight, when we swing in, our power is still pretty big. So we're going to be able to do more damage, hopefully, to either our opponent or the planeswalker we're attacking, the battle we're attacking, or at least the next blocker or blockers. It is worth recognizing, in case you're not familiar with this kind of effect, that when a creature takes damage in a turn in Magic, that damage stays on it and only wears off at the very end of the turn. So if, let's say, we were to have our commander, which is a 7/7, fight a 4/4 creature, then we're going to eat that 4/4 creature, of course. It'll take 7 damage and die. But our commander will have taken 4 damage, and that 4 damage is marked on the creature until the end of turn. So if our commander takes 3 more damage or more, our commander's going to die. So Primal Might is a great way around that, because if we make X, let's say 4, then our commander's an 11/11. And we kill that 4/4, then we get blocked by another 4/4. We've got 8 damage marked on us, but until end of turn, we're in 11/11. And that damage will wear off at the same time that the power and toughness bonus does, so we go back to being a 7/7 with no damage marked on it. That's how you survive fights. And that's what we want to do in this deck, especially with our fights. We want to try and trade up if we can, but especially to get rid of the biggest threats so that when we attack, even if we are blocked or multi-blocked, we're not going to be losing our creature in the process. Tail Swipe, excellent one from Dominaria United, is next. This is an instant fight spell. We don't see a lot of instant effect fight spells. You see more instant bites. A bite, of course, like I referred to earlier, is like a fight, but it's just one-sided damage as our creature deals damage equal to its power to something else. We only have one of those instances in this deck, and you'll see why soon. But yes, so fighting at instant speed doesn't come up that often, but we do have it here in Tailswipe. This is a single green for an instant that says to choose target creature you control and target creature you don't. If you cast the spell during your main phase, the creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and then they fight. So this is nice. It doesn't give a 1/1 counter, but that little bit of 1/1 boost means that a 7/7, like our commander, can trade with another 7/7, because when Tailswipe resolves, our commander becomes an 8/8 before the fight. Pretty good. Next up is Ulvenwald Tracker. What a cool card. Originally from Evasion Restored. So Ulvenwald Tracker is a 1/1 for 1. It's a human shaman that costs a single green. And it just has the ability, pay 1 and a green and tap it, and creature you control fights another creature. This is so sweet, because it doesn't just let us have a repeatable form of fight that we can trigger at instant speed, which is itself very nice. Like, let's say we attack with our 7/7 commander and then a 4/4, let's say, and our opponents block both of them. But if our 7/7 commander could kill both of those creatures, or both of the blocking creatures, we can have Ulvenwald Tracker, we can activate its ability and have our commander kill the creature that is blocking our other attacker, thus maybe saving our attacker from dying. Even better, we can just do that ahead of time, and then our opponent has to choose which one of our creatures are they going to block. Anyway, we can do a lot of fun shenanigans with this and be able to do it repeatably. That seems pretty fun. But it's also worth noting that there may be one or two reasons why we might want to fight another target creature that we control. One of the creatures in this ability has to be a creature we control. But the other one is just another creature. It can be anything. It could be an opponent's creature, and it probably will be, but there's at least one or two effects in this deck that make it so on those corner cases, we might want to fight our own creatures, and that's pretty sweet. We'll see it as we get to it. Barroom Brawl. Now, is this a good spell? It doesn't matter. This is a fight deck, so this is a card that's fun at the table, and a lot of the times we're going to come out ahead because we have a bunch of big creatures. So Barroom Brawl is 1 and a green for a sorcery that says target creature we control fights target creature the opponent to our left controls. So we have to choose to fight them. But then, that player may copy this spell and choose new targets for the copy. So the idea is, if we have one of our big creatures fight one of the creatures of the player to our left, they can choose to then have one of their creatures fight a creature controlled by the opponent to their left. And it can go around the table until somebody chooses not to copy it, or until there's just no more valid targets. What's great about this is the person we attack cannot get us back unless we are the only two people left in the game. So Barroom Brawl, just really fun. You know, it's time for good times. And Barroom Brawl, if we lose creatures in the process of this, it's either because we were willing to make a good trade with our opponent to the left, or because it made it all the way around the table and one of our creatures takes damage more than once probably, or is able to get hit by one of our other, by the opponent to our right's creatures, in which case probably we can just keep it going because we can go multiple orbits around the table. In any case, this is just a lot of fun. It was the Commander Legends Battlefield Baldur's Gate preview card for Loading Ready Run, which I'm a big fan of. Anyway, love this card. Really excited to see it in a deck, especially thematically like this one. Next up, another card I've been wanting to put in a deck forever because I love New Capenna. It's Boxing Ring. 1 and a green for an artifact that says whenever a creature we control enters, it fights up to one target creature we don't control with the same mana value. So Boxing Ring is a great way for us to take advantage of the fact that many of our creatures are at or above rate. So if we have, a 4/4 creature, we have at least 1 or 2 4/4s that cost 3. So our 4/4s, because they're mostly green, are likely to be bigger than our opponent's 3 mana creatures. So we're likely to win those fights. Now it does say it fights up to 1 target creature, so we do not have to have it fight anything. We can choose 0 for the number of creatures that it will fight. But if we have a chance to, we want to take advantage of this. We want our creatures to come in and be able to fight something. What's nice about this with our commander is, since our commander could come in and either fight or gain haste and trample, with Boxing Ring, we could have it do both. We choose haste and trample for its modal enters effect, and choose to have it fight something with Boxing Ring. Or we can have it do 2 fights. If it can survive those, or we don't mind if it doesn't, that's fine either way. Boxing Ring is a great way for us to have repeated fight effects, much the same way we do from Uvenwald Tracker. They just only happen when a creature enters, and they can only hit specific targets, but we're going to see those a lot of the time. In addition, Boxing Ring lets us tap it to make a treasure if we control a creature that fought this turn. And there's a really cool ruling for this, because it says we have to control that creature. So it has to have fought, and we have to control it, which means it has to have survived the fight. Because if it fights, it dies as a state-based action if it would die in the fight, so we no longer control it. So only winners get prizes. I just think that's cool. Next up is Inscription of Abundance. Really fun card. 1 and a green for an instant. This is another possible instant fight spell that has kicker for 2 and a green, which is we choose one of these 3 modes, but if it was kicked, we can choose any number. So we can do all 3, and we probably should. So first mode is we put 2 1/1 counters on a target creature. It doesn't have to be our creature. So if we want to do a couple little political things, we can help an opponent win combat against a different opponent. We can protect someone's creature. We can just offer them a pump up. That's pretty good. We would want something worth it for doing this, but it's something we can trade. Similarly, target player gains X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures they control. We can give someone some life. You know, it doesn't have to be the same person whose creature we put counters on. So we can do one opponent for one of these and one opponent for another one. Probably we're going to do our creatures for both, but I'm just mentioning. You never know how powerful it can be and what someone's willing to do for you when it comes to politicking at the table. Most importantly, though, this is an instant speed fight spell. It lets us, one of our creatures, fight a creature we don't control. So this isn't something we can spread around the way we can with the first 2, but usually this is going to get us a good little chunk of life. This is going to make whatever creature we put this on even bigger. So since these resolve in order when the spell resolves, if we were to say put these counters on our commander and make it a 9/9, we will then gain 9 life rather than the 7, which is printed on our commander's card. And then maybe we have it fight as a 9/9. Pretty good. And since this is all at instant speed, we can do this after blocks are declared, get the power bonus, get the life, get an extra fight in there. You know, sometimes it's worth getting an extra fight in if that fight wouldn't kill a creature if our creature's already going to die. Because even though it's got more damage marked on it, which as opposed to the way it looks in Arena, doesn't actually diminish your toughness. They just mark it that way in Arena to show you in a more intuitive way. But in any case, if our creature fights and then does combat damage, it's doing its power both times anyway. So we're sort of getting to double up on the amount of damage dealt in a turn when we fight and also attack. Or fight and attack. Both are good. Speaking of big fights, we've got Moloch from the Warhammer 40k decks. Moloch is a 2/2 Tyrannid for X, a red, and a green. We'll talk about its second ability first. It says, when it enters, Terror from the Deep, it fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls, and if that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So this is a 2-mana 2/2 that fights on enter and exiles whatever it kills. But also, it has Ravenous, which means it enters with a number of 1/1 counters equal to whatever we put into X, and if X is 5 or more, when it enters, we draw a card. So it will get 2 effects when it enters. One is drawing a card, and one is fighting. So we want to be able to use this sort of like a targeted removal spell. We'll pay a red and a green, and then X, where X is at least 1 less than the toughness of the creature we want to hit with it. Because Moloch, hopefully, will be able to survive that, 1 less being, since it's got a 2 here for its power. But yeah, we can definitely titrate this in a way where we get it exactly where we need to go and have it do some good for us with its enters trigger with fighting. I look at this as a 7 mana spell that we have the ability to cast for as little as 2, because we want 5 to be X so we can have it replace itself when it enters. Next is Prize Fight, another New Capenna card. Great. 1 and a green for another instant fight spell. Target creature we control fights target creature we don't control, but we also make a treasure. So we're getting paid for the match, whether or not we win the fight. That's just how fights go, I guess. Underweight, underpaid, underestimated. This little raccoon friend is fighting this huge rhino friend. Anyway, Prize Fight is really good. In a way, it is an instant speed 1 mana fight spell, because even though we're paying 2 for it, we're getting a little bit of a rebate in the process, and that's worth it. Bridgeworks Battle is, I believe, the only card in our... Oh no, I'm sorry, Bridgeworks Battle is not the one I was thinking. It's even better. Bridgeworks Battle is a 2 and a green sorcery that says target creature we control gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and it fights up to 1 target creature we don't control. So there are plenty of spells that work similar to this. They're 3 mana in green, give +2/+2, or even 2 mana in green, they give a conditional +1/+2 or +2/+2. But this one is just straight up +2/+2 and a fight for 3 mana, which is excellent for us. But it's not just that, because Modern Horizons 3 gave us these modal double-faced cards that work like this. This is a bolt land on the back, which is, it comes in tapped unless we want to pay 3 life, and if we do, it comes in untapped, taps for green. So while this is in our hand, and while it's in every zone other than the battlefield, essentially, it is just its front face. But if we want, from our hand, we can play it as Tanglespan Bridgeworks, and it'll just be a land. And if we're willing to pay the 3 life, it'll come in tapped. So this is a bonus land we have in here. We're running 38 lands, but 39 if you count this one. So this is great for us if we need land early on, or if we're desperate for green. We usually aren't. There's a lot of great mana and a lot of ramp in this deck. But in case you need it, we can always Tanglespan Bridgeworks, and we can even play it untapped if we need to. Otherwise, it's just a 3 mana fight spell that gives a nice pump that will last until end of turn. So that's good. Next is a Planeswalker, Domri, Anarch of Bolas from War of the Spark. Domri is 1, a red, and a green with a continuous ability. Creatures we control get +1/+0, so that helps with our fights and with our combat damage. For +1 loyalty, Domri can have us either add a red or a green, and makes all of our creature spells this turn that we cast uncounterable. Now, it does not say add a red or a green, spend this mana only to cast creature spells, so we can use this to cast a fight spell if we wanted to, or anything else. But the fact that he essentially gives sort of a Cavern of Souls effect to our creatures is pretty good, since we're running about a third of our deck is creatures, and most of the stuff we want to do is creature-based. So Domri as a 3 mana kind of mana rock, if you want to think of it that way. Domri giving +1/+0, I guess, sort of makes him a heraldic banner from Throne of Eldraine, because he can once per turn quote-unquote tap for a red or a green, which is even better than heraldic banner. Anyway, just some thoughts on that. But also, for -2, we can make one of our creatures fight a creature we don't control. Domri is, I have found in my testing of this deck, much better just making mana for us than he is fighting, but in my testing of this deck, I don't really have real opponents. So, you know, what's nice about Domri is also, he doesn't have an ultimate. He just has this static ability. So we can have him come in and immediately have something fight, and then he's at 1 loyalty. The next turn, we make some mana with him, and the turn after that, we make him fight something again, and he's gone. And that's plenty of value out of a 3 mana spell. But just continuing to make mana, and also making our creature spells uncounterable, pretty good. Domri does a lot of work for 3 mana. Next up, for 4 mana, is Gimli's Reckless Might. Gimli's Reckless Might, from the Lord of the Rings Commander product, but I think this is one of the Scene Box cards, is 3 and a red for an enchantment that gives all of our creatures haste. So if we don't need trample on our commander, we can have it come in, fight something, and still attack because it has haste. But it also has formidable, which means whenever we attack, if creatures we control have a total power of 8 or greater, which is to say, if our commander's out and at least one other creature, then target attacking creature we control fights up to 1 target creature we don't control. Now that's on attack. So we can go to attacks with something, have a creature of ours fight, and maybe that was the only creature we were attacking with, and maybe it dies, so combat's over. But that still forces our opponent to lose a creature. Presumably we were not going to do this unless this would kill their creature, rather than giving them the option to just take the damage and save their creature. So that's what's especially good about fight spells, and also bite spells, but fight spells in this deck particularly. It makes it so our opponents are going to have to take damage to themselves if our creatures survive, which often they will, but even if they don't, they lose their creatures. So us trading, and especially winning fights in the form of our creature lives and theirs doesn't, really gets around the combat math of our opponents playing creatures that have a lot of value to them, and they just don't want to have them be in combat in general, like a creature like Tatiova or Mother of Runes. Mother of Runes, maybe not that great of an example, but Giver of Runes, there you go. Cards that are so good, but they don't want to put them into combat if they can help it. Fight spells get those things off the table. Next up is Neath of the Dire Hunt from Original Jumpstart. Really cool card. 2 and double green for a legendary human warrior that says, whenever one or more creatures we control fight, or when they become blocked, we draw a card. So any of our fight spells becomes a cantrip with this. Any of the times our creatures attack and get blocked at all, we draw a card. We can be drawing quite a few cards during our turn. Now, it says one or more. So what that means is usually these fights are happening sequentially. You know, like we're not getting to have a whole bunch of creatures fight all at once. Even Barroom Brawl is happening with a lot of different fights, and even if we have multiple creatures fight in the form of that like cycle of Barroom Brawls, those are all separate spells. So we're going to need triggers for Neath in between our creatures fighting with those. However, it is one or more. So Become Blocked will only trigger us once for this ability if we have any number of creatures attack and any number of them are blocked. It doesn't matter how many of our creatures are getting blocked, they're all getting blocked at once. So that's one or more, so that's just going to draw us one card per instance of our creatures being blocked, not per each creature that is blocked. But it is per each creature that fights, unless, of course, we have multiple creatures fighting all at the same time, which I don't think is something that happens in this deck. So yeah, there's just one limitation on this ability here, but it's still pretty great for our deck. And that's just half of what Neath does. Did I mention Neath is a 3/3 for 2 and double green? They are. Anyway, so at the beginning of combat on our turn, we can pay 2 and a hybrid Gruul mana, either 2 and a red or 2 and a green. And if we do, we double target creature's power until end of turn, and that creature must be blocked this combat if able. So this is the couple, we have a few lure effects that force creatures to block our creatures, force our opponent's creatures to block our creatures. Now, it does say at the beginning of combat on our turn, double target creature's power, not target creature we control, so there's not likely to be that much reason for it. But there is one why we might double a creature our opponent controls power, the power of a creature our opponent controls. And that reason is Brash Taunter, which we'll get to when we see Brash Taunter. For the most part, however, Neath is going to give us this 3-mana payable trigger that lets us make our creatures bigger, and then, since they have to be blocked, that's kind of like a fight too. Now, if we're attacking opponent A, and they have 3 creatures, they don't have to block with all of their creatures. They only have to block with one of them. But they do have to block if they can. If in response to this trigger or in response to our attack, they are able to tap down all their creatures somehow, or otherwise make it so those creatures are unable to block, then yeah, they won't have to block. But assuming they have creatures that are untapped and able to block, at least one of them has to block the creature that we've targeted with Neath's ability. And a lot of the time, assuming we've chosen the appropriate opponent to attack with our creature, this is like a fight spell. You know, at worst, our creature we're attacking with is going to trade with their creature. At best, we're going to be able to get rid of that creature. And that means that we won't have dealt damage to our opponent, but we've still gotten rid of something. So it's sort of like a virtual fight. It does not trigger up here, though, because it isn't an actual fight. Next is Rivals Duel. We have several of these. Rivals Duel is the cheapest one. 3 and a red for a sorcery that says choose 2 target creatures that share no creature types. Those creatures fight each other. So this is a pretty big restriction. We can't choose a human wizard and a human rogue because they both share the creature type human. But if we have, I don't know, an ape dinosaur turtle and, a human wizard, they can sure fight each other. But the best part of this card and the other couple of cards we have that work like it is it does not say anything about us having to control one of these creatures. Rivals Duel is in this deck so that we can have 2 creatures that our opponents control, whether it's the same opponent owning or controlling the same 2 creatures, whether it's 2 creatures controlled by one opponent or 2 creatures controlled by different opponents, we choose creatures that will kill each other. Or at the very least, we want 1 creature to die from this at minimum. What we're shooting for is for 2 creatures to die from this. We want all of the fighting to seem like so much fun that we designate 2 of our opponent's creatures as rivals and let them duel and let them die from that duel. They could agree on only one thing, one of them must die. I don't agree with that, 2 of them must die. But hopefully something good will come of this. Now it is also possible to play this a little bit more complexly and have 2 creatures each deal damage to each other so that one or both of them doesn't die, but now they have damage marked on them, and that could be advantageous to us somehow, either because of damage we've already marked on them or damage that we're going to when we attack, so that they have to say, well, I could have soaked up the damage by blocking your attacking creature, but now, thanks to that other creature, and thanks to Rivals Duel marking damage on my blocker, if I do that, I will lose my creature. So there's lots of fun combat math we can do with this, but usually Rivals Duel is just saying, hey, those 2 creatures, do they share any combat? Any creature types, rather? No? Well, then they both kill each other. Seems pretty good. During Neath, when I was talking about Neath just a moment ago, I mentioned Brash Taunter. Well, here it is. Brash Taunter is this angry little goblin. It's a 1/1 for 5, 4 and a red. But it is indestructible, and it says whenever this creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. So it could be that we, at the start of combat on our turn, pay 3 mana, double the power of a creature that an opponent controls. Maybe that creature's power is 5, so we double it to 10. And it says that creature must be blocked this combat. It doesn't say that creature must block. But that creature, let's say its power is now 10. We activate Brash Taunter's last ability. 2 and a red and tap. This creature fights another target creature. We have Brash Taunter fight our opponent's creature that now has a power of 10. When it does, it doesn't die from it because it's indestructible, and whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. That's now us redirecting 10, or replacing, or duplicating, I should say, 10 damage that's going to go to an opponent. Maybe the owner, or rather controller of the creature that Brash Taunter just fought, the one whose power we pumped up, the one with power 10 now. It could be a different opponent, doesn't really matter. But we can also have it be so that, just imagine this. Imagine our opponent is at 11 life. We pump up their 5/5 to a 10/5. We attack with Brash Taunter, and we I guess we can't attack with it and not also tap it. But pretend we could. Pretend it's got vigilance somehow. We attack with it, and in response to our own attack, we pay and tap and have it fight that 10/5. It does 10 damage to our opponent, and now our opponent has to say either they're going to take the damage from the Brash Taunter and die because they're at 1 life, or they're going to block, which is another 10 damage to the Brash Taunter, which we can either hit them with or hit a different opponent with. Anyway, we're in Magical Christmas Land, but there's things you can do with this. And we've got lots of pump spells to pump up the Taunter so that it's able to do more and more damage to our opponents, or rather to the creatures that it is fighting or being blocked by, or blocking even. So yeah, there are some things we can do with Neath and Brash Taunter and effects like that are pretty fun. But in any case, Brash Taunter is just a way to do 1 damage to something. 1 damage sometimes is enough. If we pump up Brash Taunter, we can have it fight things and do even more damage to those things and hopefully kill them. But in any case, it's not dying, being that it's indestructible. And every time it fights or blocks or is blocked, we're going to be doing damage to our opponents. Can't have a fight deck without Brash Taunter in it. Clash of Titans is another spell similar to Rival's Duel, but it costs 1 more and it's less restrictive. It's just 3 and double red for an instant. This is a sorcery. At instant speed, we can have target creature fight another target creature. That's all it is. 2 target creatures fight. Boom. Doesn't even have to be our creature. It can be, and it's nice if it is, maybe Brash Taunter, maybe our commander. But imagine attacking, and then we say, before we go to blocks, I would like your 2 creatures to fight each other. Maybe it's creatures, controlled by the same player, the one that we're attacking, and suddenly they thought they had good blocks, but not yet. Or not anymore, rather. Or maybe it's a creature an opponent controls other than the defending player, and that defending player's creature, they kill each other. Maybe it's just the other 2 players at the table catching strays. Clash of Titans is a 5-mana instant that just essentially, we hope, says kill 2 creatures with creature damage. Just seems really fun. This is also exciting, and you don't want to take the risk for this, probably, but you can if you have a creature with trample, where you say, I make an attack, and you just pass priority during your declare attacker step. Let them cast their spells or activate their abilities or whatever before they block. And when they say, okay, I'm done with that, I go to blocks, you say, after your abilities leave the stack, I have priority again. I'm going to cast Clash of Titans before blocks, and there we go. You could even do it after blocks, like I mentioned, if you have trample. Maybe you make a bunch of blocks, or maybe they make some blocks to your attack, and they've got something good going on, and you're like, well, if they cast some spells, then I'll be able to respond with Clash of Titans. If they don't, I'm still winning this combat, especially with trample. And if you have that trample, even after they've blocked, you can Clash of Titans to kill their creatures, and you'll trample over. Good times. Similar effect is Dissension in the Ranks. It costs the same as Clash of Titans, also an instant, 3 and double red, but it says target blocking creature fights another target blocking creature. So more restrictive, but it's an older card. It's Shadows over Innistrad versus Ikoria. This is pretty sweet. It only works for creatures that are blocking, but that, of course, still doesn't mean it has to be creatures that are controlled by the same player if we're attacking multiple creatures. It also refers to creatures that are blocking, and something I haven't mentioned for my last 2 discussions of this effect with Rivals Duel and Clash of Titans, is this could be cast, it wouldn't happen on Rivals Duel, but on Clash of Titans it would. It's instant speed. So we can cast this when opponent A attacks opponent B, or opponents B and C. We have the defending players, creatures that are blocking, fight each other. So we can do some really fun stuff with that, and even use it as a form of politicking. We can say, look, if you're willing to attack them, I can make it so your creatures survive. And that's all we have to say. If their creatures don't have trample, doesn't mean that they're going to get any damage, but that's not what we promise. We just promise that their creatures would survive it. Or we say we can deal with their blockers, something along those lines. Even without, maybe they do have trample and they don't mind. We just need to get rid of those blocking creatures. It can be pretty sweet. Dissension in the Ranks, and the fact that it is so restrictive kind of makes it more fun to me. It's we have to be more creative to use this, and so we're going to be looking for ways to do so. And it's often going to be like, yeah, that was pretty cool. Let's do that. Last little note about this: we can use this when it's our creatures that are blocking. Again, not going to be that many options or that many times when we really want our creatures to fight each other. But like I mentioned, with Brash Taunter, for example, let's say we block with our commander and with Brash Taunter. Dissension in the Ranks lets them fight each other, which means Brash Taunter is doing 1 damage to our commander, marking 1 damage on it, that's true, but maybe that's not enough to kill it with the creature it's blocking as well as our commander is doing 7 damage to Brash Taunter, which we're throwing at an opponent, which could even be the attacking opponent. And if it kills that attacking opponent, our creatures aren't blocking anymore because there are no creatures attacking them because they've left the game with our opponent. Just some thoughts. Next, from the Final Fantasy Commander product, we have Summon Magus Sisters. I don't know who these people are. I don't know Final Fantasy. So if you know, let me know in the comments why they're cool, or why they're not, I guess. But they seem cool to me. They seem wacky. This is a 5/5 Saga Fairy enchantment creature. That is 4 and a green. So it's a saga, which means it comes in, it gets a lore counter immediately, and it triggers Chapter 1. Then at the start of our main phase, on our next turn, we're going to get Chapter 2, and the next turn after that, Chapter 3, and after Chapter 3 has resolved, it's going to leave the battle. It's going to be sacrificed. Luckily, it has haste. So it's a 5/5 for 5 with haste, and when it enters, it looks like its 3 chapter abilities are all one ability that happens 3 times. The way it works is, when it comes in, we will choose one of these at random. Either we will combine powers and put 3 1/1 counters on a creature. It can be itself. It doesn't say another target creature. Defense, put a shield counter on target creature and we gain 3 life. A shield counter is a specific type of counter that means it doesn't give +1/+1, but the creature that it's on, or the permanent it's on, I should say, if ever that permanent would be destroyed or would take damage, that event is replaced by removing the shield counter. So if it takes damage twice, the first time it pops the shield counter, the second time it would take the damage. If it would take, a bunch of lethal damage, it doesn't take that damage and the shield counter pops. If it would be destroyed by like a Doomblade effect, it pops the shield counter. If it would be exiled, the shield counter leaves the game because the creature's exiled, because it only prevents damage and destroy. And it's only the first instance of either one while it has that counter on it. Just replaces that. So shield counter, very nice. Good way to protect a creature, especially a creature that's going to be doing a lot of fighting. But again, we're choosing this at random, so who knows if we'll even get it. And the third effect is this creature fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. So we may be paying 5 mana for a 5/5 with haste that immediately comes in and fights something. Now it does say up to, so if we randomly get fight, we don't have to have it fight. It's just a 5/5 haste. Still seems pretty good. But yeah, this being a 5/5 that fights 3 times is not terrible, especially because it can fight 3 times and attack twice. The turn it comes in because of haste, and then the next turn. That third turn it won't be able to attack because after it gets its 3rd lore counter, we will sacrifice it. Still, Magus Sisters seems fun and kind of crazy in this deck, so I like that. Next, I'm so excited about this card. This is so cool. Ulrich of the Kralin Horde is an old school werewolf from Eldritch Moon. Ulrich is a 4/4 for 5, 3 a red and a green, that says whenever it enters or transforms into Ulrich, its front side, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. So that can be Ulrich himself. Maybe we have something that's giving our creatures haste, like Gimli's Reckless Might gives our creatures haste. So Ulrich might come in, have haste, and give itself +4/+4. It's attacking as a 9/9. Seems pretty good. Or maybe we have it, or as an 8/8, I should say. Or we have it come in, give itself +4/+4. We don't have haste, but we do have a fight spell in hand, so we can have our summoning sick 8/8 fight something else, probably killing it. In any case, we can also put this on our commander or anything we have with trample, and just have it be a really nice Titanic growth effect. That seems pretty great. In addition, and I know this isn't going to come up that often in this deck, or in a commander game, because it's just not, it doesn't happen that much that people pass the turn without having cast any spells. But that's at the beginning of each upkeep. If no spells were cast last turn, transform Ulrich of the Kralin Horde. So that's every upkeep. So if our opponent to our left casts some spells, and then the next opponent doesn't cast any spells, on the opponent's turn after them, Ulrich will transform. And Ulrich's backside is Ulrich Uncontested Alpha. It says, whenever this creature transforms into Ulrich Uncontested Alpha, you may have it fight target non-werewolf creature you don't control. And on this side, it's a legendary werewolf 6/6. So that means this kind of transformation happens at the beginning of the upkeep. So if we have opponents A, B, and C, and opponent B didn't cast any spells on their turn, or no one cast any spells on opponent B's turn, Then at the start of opponent C's upkeep, Ulrich's going to transform into Ulrich and Uncontested Alpha and fight something. As long as we don't control it and that thing isn't a werewolf, Ulrich can fight it, and he's a 6/6 on this side. And then, at the beginning of each upkeep, of course, if we're on the backside of Ulrich, if a player, any one player, casts 2 or more spells, we transform Ulrich back. Now that is if a player casts 2 spells or more. That doesn't mean if one player casts 1 and one player casts another. It doesn't work if every single player casts a single spell. But if any player casts 2 spells, we will transform back into Ulrich. And again, when it transforms into Ulrich, a creature gets +4 until end of turn. And that will happen, again, during our upkeep. So we'll be able to start whatever turn that is with a creature getting Titanic growth. That's great because we have a few effects that are instant speed, and we can use that even when it's not our turn. But if it is our turn, maybe our commander becomes an 11/11 till end of turn. Seems pretty good to me. Next up is Affectionate Indrik. I love that they reprinted this in Foundations. Such a cutie. 5 and a green for a 4/4 beast. Then when it comes in, we can have it fight a creature we don't control. We don't have to, we may. But if we do, it's a 4/4 that fights on enters. It's a little expensive for that, but the effects that are older than this are also a 6 mana 4/4 that we normally see as 4 and double green, so it's a little easier to cast. I just love that the problem isn't the Indrik's enthusiasm, it's Ravnica's lack of guardrails. So he's just lovingly nuzzling this guy and knocking him over the side. Very funny. Anyway, this Indrik is great. Love it in this deck. Love to see something that just comes in and fights. Great. Next is Gargos, Vicious Watcher. Amazing in a Hydra's deck. We have a couple Hydras in this deck. Let's see, we have one other Hydra in this deck. Well, that's one other Hydra. It's fine with me. And here it is, Nessian Wild's Ravager. So Gargos is 3 and triple green for an 8/7 legendary Hydra with Vigilance. It's got Vigilance. An 8/7 with Vigilance for 6 green. What are you doing, baby? Oh, it's 2020. I get it. Hydra spells you cast cost 4 less to cast. So if Gargos is out and you go to play Nessian Wild's Ravager, it costs double green, and that's it. Anyway, I'm just excited about Hydra Typal. But that's not why Gargos is in the deck. Gargos is in the deck because whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, Gargos fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So again, that is up to. So Gargos does not have to fight if we don't want to lose Gargos, maybe. But Gargos is an 8/7. Gargos can take 6 damage every turn without dying, and deal out 8 damage every time it fights. And this is whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell. It does not say a spell your opponents control. So every time we cast a fight spell on one of our creatures, maybe our commander, and an opponent's creature, Gargos can fight as well. We get double fights. Gargos loves the fights. Watching viciously. Awesome. And then we can attack with Gargos because of Vigilance. Anyway, I'm excited about it. Gargos is really cool. But is Gargos as cool as Kogla the Titan Ape, who deserves commander decks of his own and has more than Kogla and Yidaro does? Kogla the Titan Ape from Ikoria is a 7/6 legendary ape for 3 and triple green. It says when Kogla enters, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So again, like the Indrik, comes in and just fights something, just is mad already. Doesn't have to, but it can. When Kogla attacks as well, we naturalize something or disenchant something. Just destroy an artifact or an enchantment, whatever's scariest. Maybe they have a treasure token and that you don't want them to have that. Get rid of it. Or a clue token or a map token. Maybe they have a Panharmonicon, something that's really annoying. Doubling season, just get rid of it. Kogla is attacking. Kogla has already cleared the way for itself probably, so it just wants to blow stuff up. And most cool of all, and least used, for 1 and a green, we can return a human we control to our hand, and Kogla will get indestructible until end of turn. We are running 8 humans. So if we have any of those 8 humans in our on our board, when we attack with Kogla, Kogla's going to get his attack trigger, and then we go to blocks. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we kill our opponent's blocker. Maybe he's not blocked, doesn't matter. But if our opponent decides to use a kill spell, our opponent decides to block in a way that would create a trade we're not willing to make, we just bounce one of our humans with one in a green to make Kogla indestructible. Can't get rid of our buddy. This can happen outside of combat too, of course, but just really exciting to be able to do this. And what's nicest about this is some of our humans do good things when they enter the battlefield, which means Kogla is giving us the ability to, maybe we don't care about giving Kogla indestructible. We just want to pay 2 green to bounce our human so that we can rebuy it and get that enters trigger again. Or that we want to bounce our human to protect our human. For example, we really like Uvenwald Tracker. It's a human. Maybe we want to put it back in our hand, and in the process, Kogla happens to be indestructible until end of turn. We've protected our human, we've protected our ape, we're doing great. Love this card. Just really, really fun. Nessian Wild's Ravager is next. This is so cool in this deck. For 4 and double green, unless of course you have Gargos out and then it's just double green, it's a 6/6 Hydra with Tribute 6. Tribute means as it enters, an opponent of our choice may put 6/1/1 counters on it. We can choose an opponent and say, look, are you willing to put 6/1/1 counters on this creature? Maybe we have done some politicking and we've gotten them to agree to do us a favor. We're going to give them an option at some point, and we're going to ask them to let us choose what option they'll choose. Maybe they'll agree to that. And then we play our Nessian Wild's Ravager and we say, please put 6 counters on our Hydra. So we end up with a 12/12 for 6, or maybe even 2. Or we might ask them to not put it on there, because when Nessian Wild's Ravager enters, if the tribute was not paid, we can have it fight another target creature. So on its face, it either comes in as a 6 mana 6/6 and fights something, or a 6 mana 12/12. And it's a vanilla 12/12, but a 12/12 is enough, especially with our other fight spells that we can have, we can cast just on our own. But doing this in the politics way is also really fun. Next we have, such a great payoff for our fight spells, Foe Razor Regent. 5 and double green for a 4/5 flying dragon. It says when this creature enters, we can have it fight a creature we don't control. Just a free fight when it comes in. It only costs 1 more mana, 1 extra green, than the Affectionate Nindrik. And it has an extra point of toughness, and it flies. And it's a dragon. Dragons are cool. But also, whenever a creature we control fights, put 2+1/+1 counters on it at the beginning of the next end step. This is similar to our boxing match, our boxing ring effect, in that we can't put counters on a creature that's dead. So if we have a creature that fights and it survives until the end step, at the end step, Foe Razor Regent's going to trigger, and we're going to put 2/1/1 counters on that creature that fought. If we have multiple creatures fight, this is going to trigger on the fight, and we will have this delayed effect happen at the end step. So yeah, every time we have a creature fight, as long as Foe Razor Regent is in play, when it fights, we'll have this effect at the end step. I just don't want you to think that if you have a couple of creatures fight and then play Foe Razor Regent, that this will happen at the end step, because it doesn't actually trigger at the end step, like I just said a moment ago. Sorry about that. It triggers when a creature fights, and it creates a delayed trigger at that time, which will happen at the end step. Next up is Gruul Ragebeast. Gruul Ragebeast is a little expensive and no evasion or anything. 5 and a red and a green for a 6/6 beast. But it lets all of our creatures fight, because whenever this creature or another creature we control enters, that creature fights. Target creature an opponent controls. So the effect on the Intric and on Foe Razor Regent, Gruul Ragebeast essentially gives that to every creature. It doesn't actually put the effect on our creatures, it just triggers on the Ragebeast, but it affects the creature that entered. So our Ragebeast is letting things kill each other, or letting our things kill our opponent's things, hopefully. So yeah, anytime we have something that we control enter, we can have it fight, and we want to. Thorn Mammoth has a different take on that. For 5 and double green from Throne of Eltrain, love you, we have a 6/6 elephant with trample, and it says whenever this creature or another creature we control enters, this creature fights up to 1 target creature we don't control. So Thorn Mammoth is like, I see you, Gruul Ragebeast, but I have trample, and I want to be the one doing all the fighting. So it does all the fighting. Now, it's important to recognize that it does not say, oh, I'm sorry, it says up to. So it doesn't say you may have this creature fight, but what it says is this creature fights up to one target creature you don't control. So Thorn Mammoth doesn't have to fight. We can say up to is 0. But if we want, we can have it fight over and over and over every time our creatures come in, especially when it comes in. So very nice. Iziri's Predation is our only Wrath in this deck, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I just love that there's a card that is essentially a Wrath in the form of fight spells. This costs 8 mana, 5 and triple green. That's a lot for a sorcery. But what it does is, for each creature your opponents control, create a 4/4 green Phyrexian Beast creature token. Each of those tokens fights a different one of those creatures. So this is Magic's way of saying, count the number of creatures your opponents have. All of them up. You make that many 4/4 beasts, and each beast fights one of those creatures. For every creature your opponents control, make a 4/4 beast that will fight that creature. So, at the very least, you're marking 4 damage on every creature your opponents control. Maybe their creatures die from this, maybe they trade, but maybe they don't. Maybe you get to keep your beasts. Or maybe their creatures are bigger than a 4/4 and they eat our beasts. So we're at least marking that 4 damage on them. Nowhere on this card does it say the word target. So this is not a card that is protected by hexproof, or protected from by hexproof or shroud. So if our opponent's creatures are hexproof or have shroud, or they have some effect that says all permanents you control have shroud, Iziri's Predation is still going to hit them. If they have creatures with protection from green, or protection from sorceries, or something along those lines, protection from us, then those creatures are not going to take damage, but they will still be fought by these creatures, by our beast creatures. So pretty nice. This is one of the instances of fights happening at the same time, though. So for purposes like Neath, this is only going to draw us 1 card because we have a bunch of our creatures fighting simultaneously. So that's 1 or more creatures we control fighting. Something worth recognizing. Next, it's not a fight deck unless you have Apex Altasaur in it. This is a 10/10 dinosaur for 7 and double green, so it's a 9 mana creature. And when it enters, it fights up to 1 target creature we don't control. We've seen that before on a 6 mana creature. Why do we care about this? Well, because the Altasaur has Enrage, which means whenever it's dealt damage, something happens, and that is, it fights up to 1 target creature we don't control. So Apex Altasaur can keep fighting until it dies, or until we're done, because it says up to, so we don't have to keep it going. But we can have it fight over and over and over until it's dead, until there's no more creatures out there, until we have it stop, or until we have it fight a creature that does not deal damage to it. Like if our opponent has a whole bunch of 0/1 plant tokens. That's too bad. We fight one of those, it hasn't been, the Altasaur has not been dealt damage as part of the fight, so its Enrage does not trigger and we don't get to keep it going. What's nice though, is this is a fights deck. So we have other ways to have the Altasaur fight things and thereby continue to be enraged. Maybe we have the Altasaur fight several things and kill several things, and we stop before it dies. Then next turn, when all the damage marked on it is gone, or even during our opponent's turn, we cast a spell that has it fight again, and we're going to just start it all over again. Just use this as, it's not really a Wrath, but it's not even as close to Wrath as Iziri's Predation is, but still pretty close in terms of like multiple creatures we can remove. Even if all we get rid of is like a 9/9, that's still pretty good for 9 mana. Kill a 9/9 and leave a 10/10 that can make more fights happen later. Seems good. Finally, we have the Tarask from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Also 6 and triple green. We have a 10/10 legendary dinosaur. It says it has haste and it has ward 10 as long as it was cast. So if we were to somehow reanimate this, or if we were to put it into play with, I don't know, a Tali Primal Storm, which is not in this deck, those are ways to get it into play without it being cast. But in our deck, we want to hard cast it. We want to cast the Tarask for 9 mana, and when we do, it's going to have haste and it's going to have ward 10, which might as well be hexproof. It also says whenever the Tarrasque attacks, it fights target creature defending player controls. This, as opposed to some of those other fights, is not optional. It's a mandatory trigger. So we have to fight, and we have to fight a creature that the defending player controls. But we have a 10/10. We're not likely to attack an opponent that has something that can eat a 10/10 and still survive. But if we are doing that, it's probably worth 9 mana to have done it with the Tarrasque, especially since we can do it hastily. So the Tarrasque, very strong, even if we have to get rid of it, and an excellent way to capstone our fight section. So that covers all of our things in our actual game plan. We have plenty of things to support that game plan in these support sections, and after that we'll talk about what we're doing to supplement it. So let's first go to our card advantage section. As always, I use the word draw as a tag for this section, just as a shorthand. It doesn't mean that all of these spells are giving us actual card draw. It's just ways for us to get a card advantage. So yeah, just know that this isn't just draw spells. So we've seen Bushwhack. Bushwhack can lay of the land for us, so that lets us put a basic from our library into our hand. So that's card advantage, kind of. Duskwatch Recruiter, very cool card. We're going to look at the front side first, of course. This is a 2/2 human warrior werewolf for 1 and a green that has 2 abilities. The first is for 2 and a green, pardon me. We look at the top 3 cards of our library and we can reveal a creature card from among them and put it into our hand, and then we put the rest on the bottom of our library in any order. We are running 33 creatures in this deck. One of those is our commander. So Duskwatch Recruiter being on the battlefield means we've got 31 chances out of however many other cards we have left in our deck to find a creature. We got 3 of those. We got that chance 3 times, essentially. That's not how it works. Ignore me. I'm not going to explain hypergeometrics because I don't understand it. So in any case, Duskwatch Recruiter, since basically a third of our deck is creatures, we've got a pretty good chance of finding at least 1 creature for 3 mana. We also have a lot of ways to produce a lot of mana in this deck. So this is an excellent mana sink for us if we don't have something else that we want to pay it into, like Neith's Trigger. Duskwatch Recruiter can let us cycle through our library, and if we don't find a creature on the first or second activation of this, it probably means the next couple of cards we're going to draw will be a creature. So we're going to find something. In addition, this has got the same style werewolfing as Ulrich did. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, we transform Duskwatch Recruiter into Kralin Horde Howler, which is a 3/3 werewolf that says creature spells we cast cost 1 generic mana less to cast. This is going to be in our acceleration section later, but we've got a lot of acceleration and we're not relying on this one because it's so situational. The likelihood that we're going to be able to cast a creature spell on our turn while this is backside up is not high. It requires the opponent to our right to cast no spells on their last turn, and also for us to cast no instants during that turn. If that happens, we will flip this over, and then since we don't have any or many creature spells with flash, it's going to have to be on our turn that this happens. But if we do, yeah, it's nice to get a little bit of a discount on our creature spells. Usually, though, if this happens, we're probably just going to have it and just be able to enjoy that it's a 3/3 rather than a 2/2. But when it does, of course, like before, as long as a player casts 2 or more spells, then the next upkeep we're going to be able to transform it back into Duskwatch Recruiter. So a good way for us to get some creature cards. Next is Herd Heirloom from Target Dragonstorm. I think this card is great. I don't put this in a lot of decks, but I think it's pretty good in this one. For a generic and a green, we get an artifact that lets us tap for 1 mana of any color, but only for creature spells. But it's a 2 mana rock. It's pretty good. Or we can tap it and give target creature with power 4 or greater trample until end of turn, and until end of turn it gets, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So it gets trample and curiosity. So this is a good bit of evasion for us, and it lets us draw cards. We put it on one of our creatures, and it has to be a creature with power 4 or greater, but we've got lots of creatures that are that, and plenty of ways to pump up our creatures as well. So maybe we cast a fight spell mid-combat, and if our creature survives, maybe that fight spell pumped up our creature, we can then tap Herd Heirloom, to give our creature trample, and also make it so it's going to draw cards for us when it deals combat damage to a player. What's nice is also that the trample makes it more likely to deal damage to a player, since it can now trample over whatever blockers there are. And even though this mana is only good for creature spells, it is any color. Pretty alright for a 2-mana rock. Next, we've seen Moloch. Moloch, if we pump X equals 5 or greater into it when we cast it, we'll draw a card when it enters. Bandit's Hall is next. I went a little bit back and forth on Bandit's Hall, but I think it's cool in this deck, and it just seems useful. You don't see it a lot in commander decks. So this is a Manolith, which is to say a 3-mana artifact that can tap for 1 mana of any color. So it's that kind of rock. But it also says whenever you commit a crime, put a loot counter on this artifact, but only once each turn. What is a crime, you ask? A crime is when you target an opponent, something they control, or cards in their graveyard. Basically, anytime we target something, if it's not ours or us, that's a crime. So once each turn, whenever we fight something or cast a fight spell, anything that would target, because all of our fights, except for Azuri's Predation, target. So we're going to be committing a lot of crimes and putting loot counters on the Bandit's Hall. At its floor, it's a 3-mana rock that taps for 1 mana of any color, but we can also pay 2 and tap it and remove 2 loot counters to draw a card. So as long as we've committed 2 crimes, we can turn those into card draw. Next is Garruk's Uprising, just essential for most green decks. I think that, yeah, this is just very strong, and I'm glad they reprinted it in the Wilds of Eldraine Enchanting Tales. For 2 and a green, we have an enchantment that says 3 things. What's relevant in an evasion way is that it gives all of our creatures trample. They just have trample as long as this is in play. But also, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater when this enters, we'll draw a card. And after it's in play, whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters, we also draw a card. So as long as we have something ferocious meaning, of course, power 4 or greater, if it's already in play, Garruk's Uprising is going to draw us a card when it comes in. And once it's in, everything ferocious will also draw us a card. So good repeatable card advantage, and in the process, all of our creatures have trample. Pretty good. Selvala, it's so funny to say this is one of the more expensive cards in the deck, because it is, but it's $5.50. Selvala is 1 and double green for a 2/3 legendary Elf Scout that says whenever another creature enters, its controller may draw a card if its power is greater than each other creature's power, which is to say, if it is the creature on the entire battlefield with the greatest power. That is not whenever another creature enters under our control. So this is giving card advantage to some of our opponents as well if they're playing big creatures. But we've got some pretty big creatures. Apex Allosaur is a 10/10. You know, the Tarrasque is a 10/10. That's 2 creatures out of our 100-card deck. But in any case, we have lots of ways to get big creatures out and probably to be the one drawing cards. But Selvala's in this for her second ability, more so. For a single green and tap, we can add X mana in any combination of colors, where X is the greatest power among creatures we control. So maybe we've got the Tarrasque out. We pay 1 green and tap Selvala and add 10 to our pool. That's crazy. And we can do it in a combination of colors, so we can do reds and greens. Very nice. Drum Hunter is next. I think this card is exciting. I don't know why I don't see this in more decks. 3 and a green for a 2/2 human druid warrior. Oh, I do want to mention, Drum Hunter's a human. So is Duskwatch Recruiter on the front side. So is Selvala. Oh, I'm sorry, Selvala's an elf. But these 2 at least are humans. So Kogla, not our commander, but the 3 and triple green Kogla, can bounce these to give itself indestructible. Anyway, Drum Hunter is a 2/2 for 3 and a green. It taps to add colorless mana, but also at the beginning of our end step, if we control a creature with power 5 or greater, we may draw a card. Now that's repeatable card draw that does happen during our end step, and does require us to have a creature with power 5 or greater, rather than just 4 or greater. Still, our commander is power 7, so it's not unlikely that we're going to be able to get Drum Hunter out and ramp into our commander, and then draw cards off of it. And we'll be able to draw cards every time we have an end step, as long as we keep a creature with power 5 or greater in play. I like this card. We've seen Nith. Now let's talk about Oran Frostfang. Orin Frostfang is a 2/6 snow snake for 3 and double green. Don't worry about the snow. If you don't know about the snow super type, it's not relevant in this deck. 5 mana for a 2/6 snake that says attacking creatures we control have Deathtouch. So that does not apply unless our creatures are attacking. So if we have our Affectionate Indrik and it comes in and it fights another creature, it's fighting, not attacking. Attacking creatures are only creatures that have been declared as attackers and only during the combat phase in which they were declared as an attacker. Or creatures, I should say, that entered the battlefield attacking, of which we don't have any in this deck. In any case, if we haven't attacked with a creature, it's not an attacking creature. But we do have a couple of instant speed fight spells. So if we attack with a creature and then cast an instant speed fight spell, that creature is still attacking and so will have Deathtouch during that fight. The way that Deathtouch interacts with fighting is that a creature with Deathtouch doing any amount of damage to an opponent or to another creature, Deathtouch makes that damage lethal, makes any amount of that damage lethal. So as long as one of our creatures with Deathtouch is fighting a different creature, if our creature still has a power of 1 or greater, the creature it's fighting is going to die. So Deathtouch, as I've said in some past videos, is kind of a form of evasion sometimes. Because usually our opponents are going to say, well, you have a Deathtoucher attacking me. I have enough life that I can just take the damage, or I have to lose one of my creatures. And yeah, maybe it trades with your attacker, but I'm definitely losing my creature no matter what, unless my creature is indestructible. So I might as well not block and just take the damage. It's commander, I've got 40 life, I can take the damage rather than lose my creature, which might be more valuable to me. So us being able to do this and attack essentially evasively because of our Deathtouch is pretty great, especially because we can use our instant speed fight effects to take advantage of that Deathtouch during combat anyway. In addition, Orin Frostfang says whenever a creature we control does combat damage to a player, we draw a card. So that's a creature, and all it has to be is combat damage to a player. So each of our creatures that does combat damage to a player, it's not just one or more, it's each of them. We'll draw a card for each of those ones that does so. So Deathtouch acting as evasion helps us draw these cards. And pretty nice, yeah. Repeatable card draw, and for each of our creatures attacking. And we want to attack. It's a Gruul deck. Then we have Vivian Reed. I love that they reprinted this in Foundations as well. For 3 and double green, we get a legendary Vivian Planeswalker that comes in with 5 loyalty. Her +1 is, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card or a land card from among them and put it into your hand, and then put the rest in the bottom in a random order. So this lets us find our creatures or get lands if we're looking for them. If we're just desperate to get up to our 6th land to cast our commander, we can do that. Usually in this deck, we can get our commander out by turn 6 or earlier pretty often, but Vivian will help us find more lands if we need to, or creatures if we need them. And that's for her +1. She can do that right away. We can also -3 her to destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. So blow a flyer out of the sky or naturalize/disenchant. Or we can give her -8 to win the game. -8 is we get an emblem that gives all of our creatures +2/+2, vigilance, trample, and indestructible. Our creatures don't tap, they trample over, they can't be destroyed, they've got +2/+2. Imagine Kogla and Yidaro as a 9/9 vigilance, trample, indestructible. There's a reason I say Vivian's ultimate is you win the game. It doesn't automatically win it for you, but so much of the time, come on. Yeah, it's just amazing. I can't tell you how good it feels to just do this 3 times, have our opponents not be able to get Vivian or just ignore her, and then say, okay, well, I'm willing to give up my Vivian to win the game, I guess. I've seen my friends say, you did what? Next game? All right, last, we've already had Kogla, but why not Yidaro for our Kogla and Yidaro deck? This is Yidaro Wandering Monster from Ikoria. 5 and double red for an 8/8 legendary dinosaur turtle. This is where the dinosaur turtle part comes from, and also where the trample and haste part comes from. Yidaro has trample and haste, but Yidaro also has cycling for 1 and a red. So we can, while Yidaro is in our hand, pay a 1 and a red, discard Yidaro to draw a card. Except that's not how it plays out because of Yidaro's last ability. Whenever you cycle Yidaro, we shuffle it into our library from our graveyard, and if we've cycled a card named Yidaro Wandering Monster 4 or more times in the game, we cycle it onto the battlefield from our graveyard instead. So what this means is, the way this plays out, is if we activate its cycling ability, we're going to pay 1 and a red, put it in our graveyard. This will trigger while the cycling ability is on the stack, and we'll shuffle Yidaro into our library. We will then draw a card. So we don't cycle in the sense of like paying 1 and a red, discard it, and draw, and then shuffle it in. We shuffle it in before we draw. That's how it works. The first time we do that, we just sort of remember or write down that we've cycled Yidaro once. If somehow we're able to cycle Yidaro 3 more times, that last time when we cycle it, we won't shuffle it in. We will put it on the battlefield instead. We still get to draw the card because we're still cycling. But yeah, Yidaro will let us put itself onto the battlefield. It is an 8/8 trample haste. Seems pretty strong. Worth recognizing though, that Yidaro is in this deck. It's a 7 mana trample haste 8/8, and that's good. And we can get there. We can have something really big. We can cast our fight spells with it. Yidaro is often more powerful in this deck as a cycler. We get it into our hand, and we don't treat it like a 7 mana 8/8. We treat it like a 1 and a red draw spell. So we want to be able to use Yidaro to cycle more frequently, because that gives us the ability to build toward Yidaro's other part, but also because we have a lot of cards that are high mana value, and unless we have ramped our way into a huge amount of mana, which is not hard to do in this deck, but unless we've done that, Yidaro is better cycling out of our hand and finding something we can use for lower mana value or just a land than Yidaro is good just sitting in our hand as a 7-drop. So that's how we want to play Yidaro in this deck. And that covers our card advantage section. Let's look at our acceleration section, which again I've just tagged as ramp for shorthand. This is 20 cards that in some way or another give us access to more mana. That's a lot in this deck, but it's worth it because we have so many things that are expensive. Our commander is 6 mana and is likely to die at least once, so we want to be able to recast it. It ends up being really fun to be able to get plenty of mana out and just keep playing our spells. So I don't regret 20 pieces of ramp, or of acceleration rather, in this deck at all. So we're starting off with the obvious one. It's Soul Ring. It costs 1, taps for 2. It's going to go in your deck. Put it in your deck, especially one that has such big, high-cost creatures as ours does. Arcane Signet, pretty similar. Costs 2 and only taps for 1, but it's one of any color of mana in our commander's color identity. So it costs 2. It's a 2-mana rock that taps for red or green. We want that. You know, comes in untapped. It's worth it. Boxing Ring, we've seen already. Boxing Ring gives us the ability to make a treasure every turn that we have a creature fight and survive. Duskwatch Recruiter, of course, does on the back when it's Kralin Horde Howler count as acceleration, as long as we've got it back face up on our turn. Our creatures cost 1 less. That seems pretty good. But of course we're running Farseek. Farseek is one of our 2 rampant growths for the, or what it is our rampant growth for the deck. 1 and a green for a sorcery that says search your library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So we don't have any plains, islands, or swamps in this deck, and we've got many more forests than mountains. So why do we want Farseek? The reason is because we have a couple of lands that have 2 basic types that are both mountains and forests, and those lands come into play tapped usually anyway. So Farseek is letting us rampant growth for a non-basic, for a dual land, if we don't already have ours in play. And if we do, well, it lets us find a mountain, a basic mountain. That's okay. Farseek is important to recognize that it comes in tapped, just like rampant growth does. Rampant growth, which costs the same and is the same speed, but this lets us find something that is non-basic, so that's the advantage over rampant growth. We've seen Herd Heirloom. It is a 2-mana rock, only works for creature spells, but 1 mana of any color. We have Elysian Caryatid. For 1 and a green, we get a 1/1 plant that taps for 1 mana of any color, so it's a mana dork. But if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, it taps for 2 mana of any one color instead. So if we have Ferocious going on, we're going to be able to get 2 mana out of the Caryatid, and that's going to happen a lot more often than not in this deck. Especially since we can use that 1 mana to ramp our way into something with power 4 or greater. Nature's Lore is our other rampant growth, kind of. It's like Farseek in the sense that it's a 1 and a green sorcery that lets us search for a forest, put that onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. So it seems like these are basically the same card. So why is this more than 3 times as expensive? The reason is because it does not say put that card onto the battlefield tapped. Nature's Lore only finds a forest. It can't find something that is not a forest, much the way that Farseek finds us one of any of the other 4 types. Nature's Lore finds us a forest and puts it on the battlefield untapped. Unless, of course, that card says it enters tapped. So if you have a tapped duel, yeah, it'll come in tapped. But we have, like I mentioned, 2 cards that are both mountains and forests, one of which can enter untapped. So Nature's Lore will let it enter untapped. In addition, if we just need a regular forest, we've got plenty of those too. And if you're running more powerful forests and mountains in this deck, like if you want to run Stomping Grounds, the red-green shockland, or rather the forest mountain shockland, you could get Nature's Lore, shock it in, it comes in untapped. Pretty great to be able to just tutor for that onto the battlefield. So Nature's Lore and Farseek are sort of our rampant growths, so to speak, for this deck. And we've got, like I say, 2 cards that they can both find. You could put more in if you're willing to go that direction. I didn't run any of the more powerful typed duels, but I also didn't run the just sort of basic like Dominaria United and Kaldheim typed duels. So different ways for you to play it. Next up is Prize Fight. We've seen it. Instant speed fight spell, refunds us with a treasure. Bandit's Hall is another manalith. Lets us tap for 1 mana of any color and gets loot counters when we commit crimes. We do have, however, Cultivate. Cultivate is 2 and a green for a sorcery that lets us search for 2 basics, put 1 on the battlefield tapped and 1 in our hand. So this is just Lay of the Land plus Rampant Growth, except rather than being 1 green, it's 2 and a green. Pretty sweet, and I love the Strixhaven Mystical Archive art. This is a great way for us to hit our land drop and also get something into play, especially if we get this in game, we get this in our hand early on. Pretty sweet. We've seen Domri, how Domri can add mana every turn. This is first loyalty ability. Ronus's Monument is the most restrictive of our sort of manaliths, even though it's not really a manalith. This is a 3 mana legendary artifact that makes our green creature spells cost 1 generic mana less to cast. I think, even though we've got 33 creatures in this deck, I think we have like 3 of them that are not green. They're either, all the rest are either mono green or green and red, which is a green spell. And we do have at least 1 that's just a 1 mana green creature, so it wouldn't be discounted at all. But Ronus's Monument working for essentially 30 cards in our deck, that's pretty alright. In addition, it says whenever we cast a creature spell, target creature we control gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. So every time we cast a creature spell, we're getting evasion and a pump effect on one of our creatures that's already in play. It can't be the same creature, of course, because this is on cast, not on enters. But we cast a creature spell, when our commander's in play, our commander becomes a 9/9 trample until end of turn. Seems alright to me. Plus, whatever creature we cast, if it was green, cost 1 generic mana less to cast. Love Ronus's Monument. We've seen Selvala. Selvala makes us plenty of mana when we tap her. Oh, but I also love Big Stomps, Topiary Stomper from Nuka Penna. What a cute art and what a fun card. This is 1 in double green for a plant dinosaur. It's a 4/4 vigilance that says when it enters, we rampant growth. We search our library for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. However, Big Stomps can't attack or block until we control 7 or more lands. Now, Big Stomps gets us a little closer to that, and we have lots of other ways, as you're seeing in this section, to get more lands into play, but Big Stomps, a little shy until we have enough land to let it attack or block itself. However, it is ferocious. So it'll trigger Garrick's Uprising or be triggered by it. Or rather, it'll trigger Garrick's Uprising when Garrick's Uprising enters or when Big Stomps enters. And in either case, it's a 4/4 Vigilance. It is easily targetable by our spells that let us fight. Pretty good. And it's one of a few cards, or actually one of many cards we have in this deck. I think like a sixth of our deck works this way. That comes in and lets us... Yeah, it comes in and lets us just get something on its enters effect. Whether it's being able to attack, or in this case, rampant growth, that's something good for us. Next, we have Drum Hunter. We've seen Drum Hunter, taps for colorless. Goreclaw, I love Goreclaw. This is the lady bear that we like more than Ayula. More than? Just before Ayula. We like Ayula too. Goreclaw is a 4/3 legendary bear for 3 and a green. Goreclaw lets all of our creature spells that with power 4 or greater cost 2 generic mana less to cast. So our commander is normally 2 double green and double red. Goreclaw being on the battlefield makes our commander to just double green and double red. And whenever Goreclaw attacks, each creature we control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. So does accelerate us on our big creatures, but also gives our creatures a little bit of pump and a little bit of evasion. Pretty nice. The Earth Crystal. I've been putting these crystals from the Final Fantasy set in a lot of these decks, and this one it just really works for. For 2 and double green, we get a legendary artifact that discounts all of our green spells by 1 generic mana. That's pretty sweet, especially since most of our deck is green. It also says, if one or more 1/1 counters would be put on a creature we control, instead we put twice that many 1/1 counters on it. And if we pay 4 double green and tap the Earth Crystal, we can put 2 1/1 counters distributed among 2 target creatures we control. 1 on one creature and 1 on another, or 2 on just one creature. However, this is modified by this. So if we choose this mode of putting one of these 1/1 counters on one of our creatures and 1 on another, we'll actually put 2 counters on each of those creatures. If we put both of our 1/1 counters on a single creature, we'll put 4 counters on that creature instead. All of this is at instant speed. So we can do this after blocks have been declared. We can do this in response to our own fight spell to pump up our creature if we want to. Lots of things we can do with the Earth Crystal, especially if maybe we cast a fight spell. We've chosen both our creature and another opponent's creature, and an opponent's creature rather. Maybe they respond to the fight spell by pumping their creature, so we use the Earth Crystal in response to that spell to pump our creature even more by putting 4 1/1 counters on it, or 2 on it and 2 on something else. And on top of all that, all of our green spells cost 1 less to cast. I think that's worth investing 4 mana into it. Silverback Elder. This card, loved this card in Standard. I played it a lot. For 2 and triple green, we get a 5/7 Ape Shaman. This is one of our apes. That says, whenever we cast a creature spell, not when a creature we control enters, but when we cast a creature spell, we can either destroy an artifact or an enchantment, so free naturalize. We can look at the top 5 of our library and put a land from among them on the battlefield tapped, and the rest on the bottom in a random order. Or we can gain 4 life. So every time we cast a creature spell, while Silverback Elder is in play, we can get possible ramp. Now, we might whiff on this middle ability, but that's okay. We can also use it as removal, just repeatable removal every time we cast a creature. Or we can get some life. Maybe sometimes we need life. This is usually the thing we need least. I mean, even if there's nothing for us to destroy, probably I'm going to try and get some more land, unless we're already sitting on, at least 12 mana that we can tap every turn. 10 or 12 maybe. You could definitely cut it a little closer, but I feel much more comfortable just constantly getting a land onto the battlefield tapped, because we've got plenty of them. If we're looking 5 deep, whiffing on this is a reasonable bet. You just don't always win. Love the Elder. Now, I know some of you are looking at this and saying, why am I running a common from Spider-Man in this deck? It's for a few reasons. So Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary is 4 and a green for a 4/3 legendary spider-human hero. First thing to note, this is a human. We can bounce this if we want to with Kogla. it says when Spider-Man enters, this Spider-Man, of course, we rampant growth. Search our library for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So a 5-mana 4/3 that comes in and brings a land with them is all right. So this is another, like I mentioned, a card with an enters trigger, and it's an enters trigger that ramps us. It is a 4/3, so this is a card that's ferocious and turns on ferocious for the cards that we care about having that, like Goreclaw will discount Spider-Man, for example. Garrick's Uprising will trigger or be triggered by Spider-Man. But also, Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary has web slinging for 2 and a green. Web slinging is an alternate casting cost that requires us to also return a tapped creature to its owner's hand as part of the casting cost. So that means if we have played our commander, let's say, and chosen to give it haste and trample, maybe we attack with it. It attacks, it does some damage, tramples over, it doesn't die, of course, because we wouldn't have done this if it was going to, or if there were blockers that would kill it. And then second main, we're going to cast Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary for 2 and a green and bounce our commander back to our hand. That is us getting a 4/3 untapped creature and a free rampant growth, in addition to putting our commander back in our hand. Our commander being back in our hand means we can recast it and get another fight effect off of it. Or if we really wanted to, we could, this is one of the couple of ways in the deck, put our commander in our hand and then use its discard effect to be able to naturalize something, cycle it into our graveyard by discarding it, drawing a card, and then in the process of that, we can put it back in the command zone if we feel like it. Not necessarily the best thing for us to do, but we could do it if we really need to. But Spider-Man is a way for us to recur some of our creatures and get our enters triggers again. So perhaps we played Big Stomps. We get our rampant growth effect. Oh, Big Stomps is a bad example because Big Stomps has vigilance. But let's say we have Drum Hunter, for example, or Sovala, let's say. Sovala enters. Do we want to do Sovala as the example? What's a good example here? No one knows. It doesn't matter. We'll just say, we'll say Topiary Stomper. No, we'll say Elysian Caryatid. We tap this for mana. We make 2 mana, let's say, because we have Big Stomps in play, and so we have Ferocious. We make 2 mana. We use 1 more mana with those 2 to web sling Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary into play, returning Elysian Caryatid to our hand. Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary comes in and rampant growths us. So we had already tapped our Caryatid and one other thing, and now we've got the same amount of mana available that we did before. We play the Caryatid again next turn. But it's also true that Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary, like I mentioned, has 4 power. So if we have Goreclaw in play, we can just cast this for 2 and a green, that's true. But it's still a creature spell with power 4 or greater, no matter whether or not we hard cast it or web sling it. So if we web sling it in with Goreclaw in play, we can web sling it in for a single green mana, because it'll discount this by 2, since this is an alternate casting cost. We do have to return a tapped creature, but just one of the couple of ways we have to recur things in our deck and helps us ramp ourselves. Acceleration is great. But that covers our acceleration section. So let's take a look at interaction. I know you're thinking, why do we need an interaction section? Which again, I've just, shorthanded as removal, but it is our interaction section. Why do we need this in a deck with 30 cards that can create a fight effect or benefit from fighting? The reason is because sometimes we want to remove things that aren't creatures. So Neath, we've already seen. Neath lets us double one of our creatures' power at the start of combat on our turn, and it says that they must be blocked this combat if able. That lure effect, where one of our opponent's creatures has to block it, it's not a perfectly targetable thing, but if we play it in the right way and our opponent doesn't have a way to tap their creature or prevent it from blocking, and they only have 1 or 2 creatures, in play, and we're willing to remove either one, Neith's ability lets us double the power of one of our creatures and force our opponent to block with one of theirs, which is removal. It just lets us get rid of one of their creatures. Again, it's not perfectly targetable, but lure counts. So we've seen Rivals Duel, Clash of Titans, and Decision on the Ranks. All of these can remove at least one creature, hopefully two. Let's look at the Foretold Soldier from the Doctor Who decks. This card is really fun in this deck. So for 2 and double green, we get a 6/6 alien zombie soldier that must be blocked if able. Must be blocked if able is another lure effect, so this is another essentially removal spell. It also can't be blocked by more than one creature. So the likelihood that we're going to have a creature eat this creature, it blocks it, and that the blocking creature does not die, but the Foretold Soldier does. That's just a matter of which creature, or rather, which opponent do we attack with, or if they're using a pump spell or something to protect their creature and kill ours, that's fine. It gets a card out of their hand, and that's removal too. In any case, the Foretold Soldier, it doesn't have to attack every turn, but we're going to want to attack with it pretty often because of this lure effect. What's nice about it, though, is it has Foretell for 1 and a green. Foretell means while it's in our hand, we can pay 2 generic and exile it face down. We can always look at it while it's exiled. And on a later turn, so not the same turn we foretold it, we can cast it for its Foretell cost. Its Foretell cost is an alternate casting cost. So this is discounted by Goreclaw. So if we pay 2 to foretell it, then on a later turn, if we have Goreclaw out, we can cast this from the exile zone just for a single green, and it's a 6/6. What's nicest about it is whenever it deals damage, we exile it and it becomes Foretold. So that's when we attack with it and deal damage to our opponent, deal damage to another creature, like a blocking creature or a planeswalker or a battle even. Whatever we do with it, whenever it deals damage, it becomes Foretold. So we can't cast it that turn, but we can cast it the next turn for just 1 and a green. It also happens if we block with it. So this is a great card to block with if it still has Summoning Sickness, or if we just didn't have a good option for attacking with it, we can block with it. And when it blocks, it's going to do damage, and it's going to become Foretold. We're not blocking on our turn, obviously, so then the next turn of ours, we can cast it again for its Foretell cost. It's especially nice because it can deal damage in the form of a fight spell. And just very nice to be able to just keep doing this over and over and over, and just having a 6/6 for 2, essentially, multiple times. So, we've seen all of those. Silverback Elder, of course, when we cast a creature spell while it's in play, we can destroy an artifact or an enchantment. This and Kogla, when it attacks, destroys an artifact or enchantment. These are our ways of getting rid of unnatural things, artifacts and enchantments. And Vivian Reed, of course, can do the same thing with her -3. Or we can hit a flying creature with her. Every other form of removal in this deck comes in the form of a fight spell. So that covers interaction for us. I mentioned before that we have 1 Wrath in the deck. It is Azuri's Predation. It's not a perfect Wrath, but we're a creature-based deck. We don't necessarily want a more perfect Wrath than 4 damage to each of our opponent's creatures, especially when we're doing so much damage to them in the form of our game plan. And that covers our support. Let's go through the sections we have to supplement our game plan. First is this Evasion section. We have Herd Heirloom, which can give a creature trample, as long as it has power 4 or greater. It also gives it Curiosity, so that when it does combat damage to a player, we draw a card. Garruk's Uprising gives all of our creatures trample. Ronus's Monument, when we cast a creature spell, we give +2/+2 and trample to one of the creatures we already control. But we also have Ronus the Indomitable. Ronus, from Amonkhet, is 2 and a green for a 5/5 Deathtouch Indestructible God. That's so much stuff. But Ronus can't attack or block unless we have Ferocious with another creature. So Ronus gives us Ferocious on his own. If Ronus is in play, Garruk's Uprising sees Ronus and will draw us a card. But Ronus can't attack or block unless we have another creature with power 4 or greater. If we do, though, and we will, Ronus is a 5/5 Deathtouch indestructible, so a perfect choice for us to fight anything else with it. In addition, Ronus is a 5/5 Deathtouch indestructible even if we don't have something else, so still a perfect choice for us to fight things, because Ronus can't die to damage or destroy effects, and Ronus is going to kill anything we hit with it unless that thing itself is indestructible. So this, I just want to be clear, is not like a Theros god where if you don't meet the qualification, it's not a creature at all. We don't need devotion to Ronus. Ronus is strong on his own. We just aren't going to get Ronus to attack or block unless we have another creature with power 4 greater. But Ronus themselves can still do damage and can still fight in other ways. Do damage in other ways and fight, of course. In addition, Ronus, for 2 and a green, can give another creature +2/+2, and trample until end of turn. That's great evasion for us. It pumps our creatures up. We can do this in response to our own fight spells, or of course before we cast fight spells, and give our creatures more power to win fights with, and then we're able to trample in and use that power with it. But I should mention, it doesn't say another target creature we control. So again, this is something we can use politically. It may not be something we will use politically, but being able to note these things, I do this in my videos as often as I can remember to, just because politics in Commander is something that's so unique to multiplayer Magic. You can't do this, or it wouldn't help you that much to do this in 1v1 Magic unless you're playing kitchen table. But if you're playing multiplayer, being able to say to your opponent to the left, look, you're fighting someone else, I'll help you. I'll pump a bunch of my mana into giving your creatures +2/+0 and trample. It's better than Trumpet Blast, and you're not having to pay for it for your big creatures that are already going to slam in, as long as you attack them and not me. In fact, I'll do it once you attack them, because I can do it at instant speed. These are good deals you can make with people, and it only costs you 3 mana, and maybe you get ignored for a turn cycle, maybe you get some kind of other boon from them. It can be a lot of fun. We've seen Goreclaw, and how Goreclaw can give our other ferocious creatures +1/+1 and trample until end of turn when Goreclaw attacks. Vivian has her emblem that gives all of our creatures +2/+2, vigilance, trample, and indestructible. Trample is great. But we also have Stonehoof Chieftain. This card is so cool. Where is this card from? Oh, just Commander Masters. Was it from the Commander Masters Commander decks? Commander Precons, maybe? Oh, it's from Commander 2016. Got it. Okay. So anyway, Stonehoof Chieftain seems really neat. It's a big Centaur warrior, an 8 mana 8/8, 7 and a green, that has trample and indestructible, and whenever another creature we control attacks, it gains trample and indestructible until end of turn. So that means all of our creatures always have trample and indestructible as long as they have attacked during this turn. As soon as we declare them as attackers, they will have trample and indestructible through combat and until the end of our turn. Because when they attack, this triggers, and it will happen. They'll have those keywords until end of turn. So if we want to use a fight spell, but it's sorcery speed, we can wait until after combat, they've done their trampling indestructible damage, and use a fight spell post-combat, and they're still indestructible. So pretty nice. In addition, the Stonehoof Chieftain also, like Ronus, is indestructible. Doesn't have Deathtouch like Ronus, but is an 8/8. So the Stonehoof Chieftain on its own is a great card to do some fighting. That covers our our sources of evasion. Let's take a look at some of our pump spells. We've seen a lot of these already, but we also have a lot of these in the deck. So Primal Might, of course, we can pay X into it to give one of our creatures that is about to fight +X/+X. Tail Swipe, if we cast it during our main phase, it sort of has addendum, and it gets +1/+1. Inscription of Abundance can give 2 1/1 counters. Mawlock has an X in its casting cost, and it comes in with that many counters on it. Bridgeworks Battle gives the creature we target and is about to fight +2/+2. Domri gives all of our creatures +1/+0 as long as he's in play. Ronus' Monument, when we cast a creature spell, one of our other creatures is going to get +2/+2 and trample. We haven't seen Rhythm of the Wild, which goes in pretty much every Gruul deck, or every deck that's red and green. So a red and a green gives us an enchantment that makes all of our creature spells uncounterable, just like Domri does for Domri's +1, but also gives all of our non-token creatures Riot. which means when they enter, or as they enter with either a 1/1 counter or with haste. So this is a great way for us to put a counter on each of our creatures, or if we really need to or just want to, make them hasty, make them swing in right away. Rhythm of the Wild, even just for the counters and our uncounterableness for our creatures, is really excellent. Goreclaw, of course, gives +1/+1 when she attacks to all of our other Power 4 creatures. I do want to mention Goreclaw has to attack for this to go off, but it gives +1/+1 and trample to all of our creatures with Power 4 or greater, not necessarily those creatures that are also attacking. Only Goreclaw has to attack for this to go off. Neath, of course, at the beginning of combat, we can pay 2 and a Gruul to double the power of one of our creatures. The Earth Crystal can put 1/1 counters on our creatures and also doubles the number of counters we put on of that type whenever we put those on. Mega Sisters, one of the 3 random abilities it has is to put 3 1/1 counters on a creature. Ulrich enters or transforms into Ulrich and gives +4/+4, which is Titanic Growth, to a creature, which could even be Ulrich. Vivian, of course, her emblem, when she ults, gives +2/+2, as well as Vigilance, Trample, and Indestructible. And Foe Razor Regent puts 2 1/1 counters on a creature that on a creature during the end step, if that creature has fought. I'll rephrase that to say it again, the arduous way that it's written. Whenever a creature fights, at the end step, Foe Razor Regent will put 2 1/1 counters on it if Foe Razor Regent was there to see it fight. There you go. So that's our pump section. Let's talk about our cards that are going to protect our cards. And we have a few interesting ones in here. Sereth the Viper's Fang comes first. Sereth is a 3/4 legendary human warlock from Midnight Hunt for 2 and double green that says other tapped creatures you control have Deathtouch, other untapped creatures you control have Hexproof. So all of our creatures, while they're, except for Sereth of course, while they are untapped, are going to be protected with Hexproof. And when they're attacking, they have Deathtouch. Or when they're tapped in other ways. So if we were to, say, tap our Elysian Caryatid or Selvala in order to make mana, they're going to have Deathtouch because they're tapped now. We could then, if we wanted to get rid of our Caryatid, we don't need it anymore, we could have it fight something, and since it's tapped, Sereth gives it Deathtouch, and because it's fighting, it's doing damage to that other creature. It doesn't matter that it's dying, it's going to kill whatever creature it's fighting, assuming that creature is not indestructible. In addition, Sereth, if we pay 1 and tap Sereth, Sereth will untap another target creature or land we control. So creature is usually what we're doing with this. We, let's say, attack with our commander. Our commander is now a 7/7 Deathtouch because it's tapped. Our opponent casts a Doomblade on it. We use Sereth to untap it, and now it's a 7/7 Hexproof. But it's still attacking. So this sort of lets us simulate vigilance is one thing we can do with it, but really what we're doing is we have all of our untapped creatures have Hexproof, and if we were to tap those creatures, if we want to protect them, we can just tap Sereth to untap them, and then they will have Hexproof again. We can, however, pay 1 and tap Sereth to untap a land we control, and we are running a bounce land in this deck, so we could pay 1 mana to untap a bounce land, which taps for 2. So maybe we tap the bounce land for 2, use one of them with Sereth to untap the bounce land and tap it again, and we've got 3 mana. And all we had to do was tap Sereth for it. Seems pretty good. Next is Temur Sabertooth. Temur Sabertooth is 2 and double green for a 4/3 cat. It's not the person, it's just the cat. Anyway. Temur Sabertooth says for 1 and a green, we can return another creature we control to its owner's hand, and if we do, Temur Sabertooth gains Indestructible until end of turn. This is the same ability that regular Kogla has, the 3 and triple green Kogla, except that the creature we return does not have to be a human. It can be any other creature. So like I mentioned with Kogla, this lets us rebuy our creatures. It lets us recur them and get their enters triggers or effects we would get, like Gareth's Uprising and such, or like a Boxing Rings trigger over and over again. We don't have to do this in order to make Temur Sabertooth indestructible. we can do it whenever we want to, and we'll also get the indestructible effect on it. So this is a great way to benefit from that, especially because also the Sabertooth it gives us ferocious. So one more creature with 4 power. We've seen the Mega Sisters and how they can put a shield counter on things. It might protect us. Vivian Reed, of course, gives us protection with her ultimate because our creatures get indestructible. Kogla, just like the Sabertooth, can give itself indestructible if we pay 1 and a green and bounce a human we control. Spearbreaker Behemoth, or Behemoth, is next. This is a 5/5 beast for 5 and double green. It is itself indestructible, so another great thing to fight with. But we can also pay a single generic mana, and target creature with power 5 or greater gains indestructible until end of turn. Obviously, the easy thing to do with this is something like this. Maybe the Behemoth is in play, and we play our commander. When it comes in, we have its trigger go on the stack, its enters trigger, and in response to our own trigger, we activate the Behemoth. We make our commander indestructible with the Behemoth, and then we choose the commander's mode. Actually, I guess its mode would have been chosen beforehand because it targets. We choose that it's going to fight, but before it resolves and actually goes through with that fight, we can use the Behemoth to make it indestructible. And we can do that with any of our creatures that have a trigger or that we're using a spell with to fight. So it protects our fighters. In addition, like I mentioned, it's indestructible itself. Last thing I want to mention is more politicking. It does not say target creature that you control. So we can protect our opponent's creature with this if we really want to. We just have, that creature needs to have power 5 or greater, and we need to get something good out of it. Because why would we help them out in that way unless we were getting something good out of it? Just saying. Finally, we have Stonehoof Chieftain again. Like I mentioned, it's indestructible, and it gives our other creatures that attack trample and indestructible until end of turn. That covers our protection section. Let's take a look at these 4 cards that give us Deathtouch. We've seen 3 of them. Oran Frostfang gives our attackers Deathtouch, only while they're attacking. Sereth gives our tapped creatures Deathtouch, as long as they're tapped. And Ronus itself has Deathtouch, which wouldn't be enough to go in the Deathtouch section on its own, except for the fact that Ronus is indestructible, and we've got so many spells that make other creatures fight, or that make creatures other than the card we're using to get the fight effect fight. Like, Affectionate Idric fights on its own. But we have plenty of spells that are non-creatures and spells that are creatures that make other creatures fight. So Ronus fighting with Deathtouch is pretty great. However, because we make so much mana in this deck, and because we have the ability to have multiple cards enter at the same time, or on the same turn, I should say, we have Venom Connoisseur, originally from Streets of New Capenna, but reprinted in Foundations. Venom Connoisseur is a 2/2 human druid for 1 and a green. Human, I mentioned, because again, helps with Kogla, that has Alliance. Alliance means whenever another creature we control enters, this creature gains Deathtouch until end of turn. And if this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, all creatures you control gain Deathtouch until end of turn. So as long as we get one creature to come in after Venom Connoisseur is in play, Venom Connoisseur is a 2/2 Deathtouch. If we have a second creature enter on that same turn, all of our creatures, including the second one that entered, all of our creatures have Deathtouch. So if our second creature that enters is, let's say, our commander, then our commander will come in and we will have this ability trigger at the same time as our commander's enters trigger. We can stack them however we want. We have this resolve first, and our commander attacks, or rather fights, when its ability resolves, as a 7/7 Deathtouch. So even if we're doing this just to kill another creature that may eat our creature, that's all right because we're going to take that creature with us using Deathtouch. Worst case scenario, we play Venom Connoisseur, we get another creature to enter, Venom Connoisseur itself gains Deathtouch, and then we have the Connoisseur fight something and use her Deathtouch to kill it. Pretty fun. Deathtouch is just, it's great with bite spells, but it's pretty great with fight spells too. So yeah, good times. Finally, we have a recursion section. These are spells that give us value, or that let us gain value multiple times from the value that we're already getting from our other spells, like Affectionate Idric. Maybe if it doesn't die when it fights, or our commander, if it doesn't die when it fights, we would like it to be able to do that again. So we have cards like Regrowth. Regrowth, with, of course, the Mystical Archive art, beautiful. 1 and a green for a sorcery, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. That's all it takes. Just, if something has died or something has been cast, put it back in our hand. This is another way for us to discard our commander if we want to do that, if it goes to the graveyard somehow from just dying. This is a way for us to get a card, or to get our commander back into our hand, assuming that it has gone to the graveyard somehow. And when it's in our hand, we can use its discardability, is what I mean to say. But it also lets us, it puts Tail Swipe or Bushwhack back in our hand. We can do an additional fight, for just two more mana and casting it again. Or we get one of our creatures. We can even get a land back if we're being milled somehow. Whatever we need with Regrowth, we can get it back and do it again, and do it again. Temur Sabertooth, like I've mentioned, lets us bounce things the way that Kogla does. That's a good point. Kogla should be in this section. Kogla, you are a recursive spell. Good. There we go. Much better. Thanks for waiting. So Temur Sabertooth and of course Kogla can bounce our own creatures. Temur Sabertooth can do any creature we control. Kogla can do any human we control. And it will give both of these creatures indestructible, but what we care about is the fact that we can then replay those creatures. That's the recursive nature of this. The Foretold Soldier, of course, recurs itself. It just keeps getting foretold and keeps coming back in. Why is that valuable to us? Because we have things that care about when something ferocious enters, like Garruk's Uprising, for example. Or we have our spells that care about when our creatures enter, like Venom Connoisseur gives itself or all of our things Deathtouch. Or Thorn Mammoth will fight things when our creatures come in. Just having our creatures enter, Boxing Ring will have the Foretold Soldier and fight when it does that. Pretty good. It is worth mentioning, I guess I did not say this earlier with the Foretold Soldier. It says whenever this creature deals damage, exile it face down, it becomes foretold. This is a triggered ability. It triggers whenever it deals damage. It does have to survive the event where it's dealing damage. So if it's dealing damage and being dealt damage at the same time, if that damage that it is dealt would kill it, then this trigger will go on the stack, but the Foretold Soldier will already be in the graveyard and will not be able to be exiled because it will have changed zones. So as long as it survives the event where it's dealing damage, then you will exile it face down. Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary, of course. Rather than just returning things the way that Temur Sabertooth and Kogla do, Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary needs those things to be tapped in order to web sling it in. And that seems pretty good too. I don't think that's a worse restriction than those things being humans the way that Kogla needs them to be. Finally, we have Conjurer's Closet, which is a little out of place in this deck until you think about all of the value we get from our stuff coming in. For 5 generic mana, we have an artifact that flickers our creatures at our end step. At the beginning of our end step, you may exile a target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. When we do that, any enters effects it has will trigger, any effects that come from our creatures entering will trigger, like Boxing Ring, like Thorn Mammoth, like Poison Connoisseur, not so much, but Garruk's Uprising, is valuable. Poison Connoisseur will still trigger, but just won't necessarily be that relevant. Although, I guess, maybe it makes creatures have Deathtouch, and then we could use an instant speed fight, like Prize Fight. It's a possibility. Anyway, getting the ability to continue to recur creatures and get our additional enters triggers, that's what this whole section's about, and Conjurer's Closet does a great job of it. And that covers all of our spells. We're going to talk now about our lands, as usual. So we're starting off with our basics. We are running quite a few forests compared to our mountains in this deck. As you can see, our deck is mostly green cards versus red cards, and there are a few cards that are both. There's an overlap in this area. In order to make it really match up with our mana production, I would have to actually run fewer mountains than this, and I didn't want to, because I'm worried about having enough red mana production for our commander. Our commander needs 2 red, and we've got lots of cards that are dual lands, but I want to make sure that we have mountains in case we need them, and we can get them out as early as possible. So we're running twice as many forests as we are mountains. Obviously Ikoria Art, because this is Kogla and Yidaro's home. We are running Sheltered Thicket. It's a bicycle land. Bicycle means it's a tap land. It can tap for red or green, and we can cycle it for 2 by cycle. That's how it works. So late in the game, if we don't need this, we draw it, we can cycle it. That seems fine. Draw something else. The reason that this card is good in this deck is because it is a typed dual. It comes in tapped, but it is a mountain and it is a forest. So Farseek can find it because it's a mountain, and Nature's Claim can find it because it's a forest. So if we cast one of those and we don't have Sheltered Thicket out or in our graveyard or in our hand or whatever, we can go pull this out and put it into play tapped because it comes in tapped. So that is a nice hit for us, and probably our best hit for us when we cast Farseek, because Farseek is going to put a card into play tapped anyway. So since this is always going to come in tapped, we would like that. But if we happen to just draw it, we can play it as a tap land, or we can cycle it. Bicycle lands are good that way. I mentioned already that we were running a bounce land. It's Gruul Turf. Gruul Turf comes in tapped, and when it does, we return a land to our hand. And that's why it's called a bounce land, because we bounce one of our lands. That means if this is the first land we play, we have to bounce it back to our hand. We don't want to do that. And if it's the second land we play, and bouncing the land we already had in play to our hand would put us at 8 cards in hand, we might have to go to cleanup. So probably don't want to do that. We can, however, tap a land for mana first and then play Gruul Turf. Gruul Turf will come in tapped, and we can bounce that tapped land and we still get the mana from it. The reason we'd go through all this rigmarole is because Gruul Turf taps for 2 mana, a red and a green. So pretty nice for us. We can also do some fun tricks with it, like, for example, Sheltered Thicket. Maybe we tap Sheltered Thicket for mana because it's already in play. We play Gruul Turf, bounce the Sheltered Thicket to our hand, and now Sheltered Thicket is in our hand, and either that turn or a later turn, we don't have to replay it, we could just cycle it. So we were able to get benefits out of it in both ways, both from it being a land and from its cycling ability later on. We are running plenty of basics and 2 typed duals, so we have 23 cards with basic types in our deck. So Rootbound Crag, our check land, helps us with that. It is a land that enters tapped unless we control a mountain or a forest. And like I mentioned, 23 of the cards in our 100 card deck are mountains and or forests. So Rootbound Crag, pretty likely to come in untapped, and it taps for red or green. If you wanted to upgrade this, you could upgrade it to Rockfall Vale, which is a slow land. It comes in tapped unless you control 2 other lands of any type. So probably more likely in a commander deck to come in untapped, but Rootbound Crag is still pretty good. You could run both if you wanted. We're running 2 filter lands, the Mossfire Valley cheaper one and the Firelit Thicket more expensive one, but both very good. Mossfire Valley requires you to have mana to pay into it in order to tap it at all, but when you do, it makes 2 mana. So the idea is, let's say you have a mountain in play and Mossfire Valley, you can tap the mountain to pay into the Mossfire Valley and tap it to make a red and a green. So it filters mana into red and green, but you're still tapping 2 mana sources to get 2 mana. So not as good as a card that can just tap on its own, but still pretty great. It helps you get your colors. Firelit Thicket is a little bit of an upgrade from it, almost in all ways, in all but one way, really. You can tap it for colorless on its own, or you could pay a red or a green into it and tap it to make either 2 red, 2 green, or red and a green. So much more flexible than Mossfire Valley, and it taps on its own. The only downside versus Mossfire Valley is that you have to pay red or green into it. You cannot pay colorless mana into it the way you can with Mossfire Valley, because this is a generic mana cost. So otherwise, I would say strictly better. It's, I think, definitely better, but just not strictly so. Next, we're running 4 fixing lands. We're playing Command Tower because it's a deck with at least 2 colors in it, and even 1 and 0 color decks often want Command Tower. Maybe not 0 color. Anyway, Command Tower is an untapped land that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, so it's the same as Arcane Signet, but it's on a land. Of course we want that. We're also running Path of Ancestry, which is Command Tower, but it enters tapped. A tapped Command Tower is still a good land. I mean, Ruban Crag, if it comes in tapped, is a tapped Command Tower for us because we are only running 2 colors. So Path of Ancestry is excellent because it comes in tapped, but makes 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. But also, if we cast a creature using the mana from Path of Ancestry, and that creature shares a type with our commander, we scry 1. Obviously, our commander shares a type with itself. It has 3 types. It's an ape, it's a dinosaur, and it's a turtle. So we cast our commander with Path of Ancestry mana, we get a free scry off of that. We also have 6 other creatures in the deck that are those types. We have 2 other apes, the silverback gorilla, or silverback elder, I should say, of course. We have several other dinosaurs, like our... oh no, I'm only thinking of Tailswipe, which has got a dinosaur on it. Anyway, we have several other dinosaurs, and we have 1 other turtle. So lots of cards in this deck that will... I guess Yidaro itself is a turtle and a dinosaur. So we don't have an extra turtle beyond our commander and beyond the other dinosaurs. But in any case, 6 other creatures and our commander for Path of Ancestry to give scries to, and in any case, it's a tapped duel, just like Command Tower is an untapped duel. Pretty good. We are running Temple of the False God. I think this card is great, especially in these kinds of decks. This is a deck with a budget of less than $100, so the speed at which we're operating is totally appropriate for this card. It taps for 2 colorless mana. So this is a soul land. It's like a soul ring on a land. It's amazing, except that you can't tap it at all unless you control 4 other lands. So 5 or more lands, including itself. That is not great. If this is, you have an opening hand of just 2 or 3 lands and one of them's a Temple of the False God, you probably want to mulligan that. Not necessarily in this deck. Sometimes you can get away with it, but in any case, this card is very good, especially in the type of mana curve that we are running with these big expensive creatures like our commander. We also have Myriad Landscape. Myriad Landscape is, I just think it's wonderful for this kind of deck especially. It enters tapped, and it taps for colorless. Or we can pay 2, tap and sack it to search our library for up to 2 basics that share a land type. So in this deck, either 2 forests or 2 mountains. We put them on the battlefield tapped, and then we shuffle. So like a double rampant growth, as long as both of the basics are the same type. It seems slow, and it is slow. But Myriad Landscape is us making 1 land drop, and even though we're paying mana into it and sacrificing it, we're getting 2 lands in play eventually. So this is ramp in our land base. We just have to wait a little bit for it. The same thing is true of Temple of the False God. Being able to make multiple mana off of 1 land drop, pretty great. We could sort of side grade here if we want. Maybe get like a Fabled Passage, which is likely to get a basic into play untapped for us. Or a Blighted Woodland, which does what Myriad Landscape does, but taps for green, but also takes longer to cast, to be able to sacrifice it, since it requires us to spend 4 and tap and sack it. So those are both, of course, in the, or at least Blighted Woodland is in the considering section below. We are running Karplusan Forest. It's a pain land. It comes in untapped and taps for colorless, or we can tap it for red or green if we're willing to have it do 1 damage to us when we do. This card is excellent. We have so much mana production and so many ways of making our colors and so many places where we need just mana that it's fine for us to use the colorless. And if we're really desperate for the colored mana, it's Commander. We've got lots of life. We can spend this plenty of times and not be hurting too badly. In addition, think of Karplusan Forest and tapping it and filtering it through Mossfire Valley. You've got a red and a green. You're doing fine. I love the pathways, so I like to put them in most of my commander decks, but not all. This is a modal double-faced card. It is Crag Crown Pathway. Comes in and taps for a red, or we can play the backside if we want. Comes in and taps for a green. Just whichever thing we happen to need more of. Usually it doesn't really matter in this deck, but it can be great. And it's another way for us to use our bounce lands. So maybe we need green early on. We play it as Timber Crown Pathway. Then we play our bounce land. We bounce our pathway back to our hand, and we can replay it on its front side, and now it makes red. Pretty fun. Temple of Abandon is a scry land. It always comes in tapped, but when it does, we scry 1, and then it taps for red or green when it's untapped. Pretty good. Love that they reprinted this cycle in Foundations. And again, just like I mentioned with the bounce land, if we really wanted to go a little slow, we could bounce the Temple of Abandon and play it again and get another scry. We have a single Tango land, of course. It's the one in our colors. It's Cinderglade. Cinderglade comes in and taps for red or green because it is a mountain and forest. This is our other typed dual. So we can find this, and it's great for us to find with either Farseek or Nature's Lore. But this is the one that we would probably rather hit with Nature's Lore, because if we already have 2 basics in play, it comes in untapped. Otherwise, it comes in tapped, and that's okay too. Being able to find a typed dual with a 2-mana tutor is totally fine. Being able to find an untyped dual with a 2-mana tutor, the only way we can do that in this deck is with our Nature's Lore, and if Cinderglade comes in when we already have 2 basics in play, but that's pretty great. So yeah. Our last section is our utility lands. We're going to start with the Demolition Field, which I put in most of my Commander decks, because while mass land denial is generally frowned upon in Commander, targeted land removal is something you want to have access to, because sometimes someone's running, a Rogue's Passage. Someone's running, some kind of land that's giving them an awful lot of value. Like, I always bring up Glacial Chasm because I have a friend that runs it, Sometimes you need to get rid of someone's land because it's a part of their combo. You want to get rid of their Maze's End, let's say. Demolition Field comes in untapped and taps for colorless. But you can also pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land an opponent controls. But then, that player, gets to find a basic and put it on the battlefield untapped, and so do we. So even though we're blowing up one of their lands and sacrificing one of our own, neither of us is actually down a land unless one or both of us didn't have any basics left in our library. And those basics even come into play untapped. So it's basically the nicest way we can do things. We're running Racer's Ring. Racer's Ring is from New Capenna, and of all of the tapped lands that can give us some cool stuff, this is just the one that I liked the best. This taps for red or green, definitely comes in untapped, or comes in tapped rather, but late in the game if we want, we can pay 4 mana to a red and a green, and tap it and sack it to draw a card. So if we've been able to get out plenty of lands from our great amount of ramp, or we're ramping with our artifacts as well, and we just don't need Racer's Ring, we can certainly pay the equivalent of 5 lands and lose one forever to turn it into card draw. It's not ideal, but it's very cheap, and it can be useful. We've got Rogue's Passage, because we want to be able to get in sometimes. A lot of the time, so Rogue's Passage, I can say what it is. It is an untapped land, taps for colorless, or we can pay 4 and tap to make one of our creatures unblockable until end of turn. We have this in here for a couple of reasons, but the biggest one is because so many of our creatures are going to be doing some fighting, which means our creatures are going to have damage marked on them, which means if we attack, we might have already killed one creature, but they may be able to trade up. Our opponents may be able to trade up, so we're trading down with our big creatures that have already got damage marked on them, since that damage is already marked there. If our commander has killed something, with power 3, all our opponents have to do to block our commander that turn is block with something with power 4, which means our 7/7 is going away just from 4 damage. Not ideal. Much better to spend the mana on Rogue's Passage and tap it to make our commander unblockable and just get in, thereby protecting our commander, as well as trading with, or not trading, but destroying a creature through a fight. This lets us have our cake and eat it too. We're killing a creature of theirs, but we're not doing it by letting that creature block, and we're also doing damage to our opponent. So we get something of theirs like they blocked, and we get in like they didn't. The second aspect of this that's important is, like I just mentioned, we can do it on our commander. Our commander has 7 power, which means it only has to hit an opponent 3 times for us to win with commander damage. Rogue's Passage, and of course all of the other forms of evasion are great for this, but Rogue's Passage is especially great because unblockable. If we're able to use our commander and protect it and attack with it 3 times, our opponent's just dead. Whatever opponent has taken that 21 commander damage from us. Rogue's Passage is a great way for us to do that. Finally, as I mentioned a couple of times already, it doesn't say target creature we control, just target creature. So we can use Rogue's Passage politically to help our opponents get in when they attack our other opponents. Sometimes the best way to remove one of our opponents is to let a different opponent do it, and we can certainly help them with that with Rogue's Passage, as long as they're willing to give us some kind of kickback on it. I know you're already thinking, it's like, well, they don't need to give us anything because what they're giving us is getting rid of one of our opponents, but it's one of their opponents too. So we can certainly play the politics game with Rogue's Passage and get a little something more out of it from there. Last of all, this is something so cool. We're running Skarg, the Rage Pits. This is a land from originally Plane Chase. Oh, I'm sorry, Guild Pact. My mistake. I guess originally Dual Decks Heroes versus Monsters? Anyway, it was in Guild Pact. That's what I know. Skarg taps for colorless, comes in untapped, but we can also pay a red and a green and tap it to give a creature we control +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. So this is only 1 creature, and it's costing us 2 mana plus tapping Skarg, but this is what Goreclaw gives when Goreclaw attacks and one of our other creatures with power 4 or greater is targeted by, or is affected by it. So Skarg, this may give us the ability to survive a fight, because we don't have to do this during combat. This will maybe give us the ability to survive a block, or even a block we're making, but especially a block that that when our creatures are being blocked. And we might even trample over enough to just win, if we have Deathtouch, especially. We don't need Deathtouch for this example, but I do want to remind listeners or viewers, I guess you're viewing right now, that Trample and Deathtouch go so well together. If our commander gets Trample from this, let's say, then they are an 8/8 with Trample. If they've gotten Deathtouch somehow, for example, Venom Connoisseur, they're an 8/8 with Trample and Deathtouch, which means when they deal damage to a blocker, they only need to deal 1 of their damage to that blocker for that damage to be considered lethal, and all of the rest of the damage tramples over. So if our opponent blocks our 8/8 trampling Deathtouch commander with just 1 creature, they're going to take 7 trample damage, because we're going to do 1 damage to the blocker, and that's lethal damage. And the rest of the damage will just trample over, because that's how Deathtouch and Trample interact. Even if their blocker is indestructible only cares after they've taken lethal damage. The calculation of lethal damage is still a single damage, because the source of that damage, it has Deathtouch. So Skarg can be really nice with our Deathtouchers, as can all of our other ways of giving trample, like Herd Heirloom and Goreclaw. But having this in our land base, pretty sweet. That about sums it up. Again, I'm making a deck for each of the Mark to the Machine legends. So let me know in the comments if you have a specific legend you'd like to see me build for, or a deck style you'd like to see me build it in. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe, and remember, Magic is fun. You should play more Magic.